Chapter 290. For example, a peerless evil like Otsutsuki Kagaya. Even if she stole the fruit of the god tree, and was sealed in the end, she was still the one who had the last laugh. From a mortal to a godlike existence, regardless of success or failure, Kagaya was already a winner in life. Therefore, Dustless also looked at the so-called justice and evil with contempt. In the dense forest, two silhouettes were walking alone. They were wearing wooden bamboo hats, and the white ribbons on the hats were all small bells. When they walked, they would make a pleasant sound. Those two zombie duo are really messing around. They deserve to be killed for violating Paine's order. Dustless and White Zetsu walked side by side, looking at the several figures in front of them, frowning slightly. The cold luster from their pupils seemed to be able to crush the void, giving the outside a terrifying gloominess. Even Dustless, who was standing beside him, felt as if he had fallen into hell at that moment. Damn, it's only been a few days, but this kid's strength seems to have improved again. Bastard, how did he do it? The corner of Heiju's mouth twitched fiercely. He cursed in his heart. Wu Chen's murderous aura left him an eternal and indelible memory. As the saying goes, a cornered dog will jump over the wall. At this moment, Black Zetsu was like an ant on a hot pan. Although his heart was particularly irritable and depressed, he still kept calm for the first time. It's not impossible to become stronger, but at least there is a limit. Becoming stronger without limit is not something normal humans can do. Even Otsutsuki Kagaya has her own limit. The casual look just now, and the uncontrollable murderous aura that leaked out made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. And he couldn't help but shiver. I haven't seen you for a while, and Dustless, Sama seems to be a lot stronger. In this case, our plan is more secure. Compared to Black Zetsu, who was good at playing tricks, White Zetsu was much simpler. He just hoped that the Eye of the Moon plan could be completed quickly, and then resurrected Uchiha Madara to release the Dream Jutsu to the world, Infinite Tsukuyomi. I don't want to wait any longer. Let's start the plan as soon as we're done. Dustless said thoughtfully as he stared at the few figures in front of him. He had also completely thrown away the restraints in his heart. Instead of waiting for death, he might as well take the initiative to attack, and seize the initiative in this battle. Looking up, the people in front of him were Haiden and Kakuzu, as well as Konoha's Team 7 and Team 7, especially Terumi-Mei, who was his ally. As for the final Infinite Tsukuyomi Jinjutsu, it was not something Dustless could deal with. The so-called covenant didn't exist at all. In the end, the nature of this world was survival of the fittest. Since Mei couldn't survive, she couldn't save the Mist Village. Should I get rid of all these small fries? Forget it, it's useless for small fries to live anyway. I'll just let them live on and enjoy the rest of their lives. Raising his eyelids and looking at Konoha's ninja with pity, Wu Chen sneered expressionlessly. His pupils were like an ancient well, without the emotions that a human should have. He was like a sculpture, and his body was isolated from the world. People were selfish, and Dustless was no exception. He only hoped that the people he cared about could live well. As for the life and death of others, it had nothing to do with him. I can't go on like this. I must find a way to contain this kid. The murderous light in his eyes disappeared in a flash, and Black Zetsu's mind was spinning rapidly. If he let Dustless continue to strengthen without limit, in the end, he wouldn't be able to defeat Dustless. Boom, boom, boom. Violent chakra waves suddenly exploded, and strong air waves blew all the leaves in the forest. Looking up, it was the two sides that had already started fighting. At present, Konoha's ninjas were temporarily at a disadvantage. After all, Haiden and Kakuzu were both powerful ninjas, and they were able to join the Akatsuki. It doesn't seem good. We are here to collect the corpses of Haiden and Kakuzu, not Konoha's ninjas. White Zetsu abandoned his position and began to worry about Konoha's ninjas. Black Zetsu was speechless. Shaking his head, Black Zetsu was too lazy to talk nonsense. They were indeed here to collect the corpses of Haiden and Kakuzu. This is very simple. If Konoha's ninjas can't do it, just like how we killed Sasori, we will personally end their lives. A strange smile swept the corner of his mouth, and the cold light in his eyes suddenly condensed, shooting out cold light. Dustless's killing intent was awe-inspiring. As for Haiden and Kakuzu, they were originally used to capture the bijou. Now that they have all gathered, only Nibi and Kyubi are left. These S-class ninjas are insignificant. Ah, Dustless, Sama is still as cold as ever. But this is a suitable way for them to die. White Zetsu said with a mocking smile. Looking at the zombie duo, Kakuzu and Fei Duan, he was looking forward to seeing if these two undead guys could remain calm in front of Dustless's words. But Dustless, Sama doesn't seem to have a chance to make a move. Konoha's support may have already arrived. After a long silence, White Zetsu suddenly said with a tone of pity, because within his perception range, Konoha's ninjas have already arrived, and the number was not small. Dustless maintained a calm expression, and his expression didn't change. Obviously, he had already expected that Konoha's ninjas would come to support. After all, Haiden and Kakuzu were S-class ninjas, and Konoha's side was just Team 10 led by Kakashi and Asuma. Only by sending new ninjas to support can they maintain the victory. Chapter 291. The oppressive atmosphere quietly spread, and the two opposing forces were obviously in a life-and-death struggle. Even top-level powerhouses like Haiden and Kakuzu couldn't help but tense up in the face of Konoha's ninja. There is a saying that the king of hell is easy to deal with, but the little devil is difficult to deal with. What he said was not unreasonable. Team 10 was originally an intelligent ninja, and their own Haiden's brain was not very good, and his character was reckless, and he died as soon as he came on the field. However, Haiden had an immortal body, and this kind of ordinary physical attack was ineffective against him. Even if the previous attack had cut off his head, with the help of Kakuzu, he still miraculously succeeded in resurrecting. After resurrecting with full blood, Haiden's expression was extremely arrogant, and his smug smile was particularly annoying. This kid is still surprisingly annoying. Wu Chen's indifferent expression stiffened. Seeing Fei Duan being so arrogant, Wu Chen's face twitched without a trace. Fei Duan in front of him was so annoying that he couldn't help but want to beat him up. Not to mention that he killed someone else's teacher. He even showed off in front of his apprentices, which was really hateful. His ability is really weird, incredible. I can't help but want to dissect him. White Zetsu looked at Haiden with a strange light in his eyes. He was a professional zombie, and he had seen all kinds of corpses, but he had never seen an immortal like Haiden. His ability is good, but unfortunately, his death is also the most tragic. Recalling the tragic end of Haiden's dismembered body and buried alive, Dustless couldn't help but sigh. The most heaven-defying ability was also the most tragic end. Because Haiden was cursed, his body wouldn't die, so he was still alive even after being buried alive. He could only die slowly in the cave because of the stench of his body. It was self-evident how miserable his end was. Boom, boom, boom. A strong wave of air spread out, and a huge pit suddenly appeared on the ground that was still intact before. Haiden, a powerful humanoid beast, was not comparable to the kid of Team 10. Shadowbind Jutsu. Seizing the opportunity, Shikamaru Nara immediately used the Nara clan's secret technique to restrain Haiden. Due to the secrecy, of course, Haiden's own carelessness could not be ruled out. Soon, he was bound by the elongated black shadow on the ground, and his body could not move according to his will. Kakuzu frowned when he saw this. He looked at the shadow on the ground that was connected to Haiden's body with surprise. His face was full of interest. He could see Haiden's body moving uncontrollably. Kakuzu looked at Shikamaru, who was sweating profusely. Kakuzu looked at Shikamaru with great interest. His expression was inevitably filled with greed. This kind of technique that could control others without them knowing was a rare secret technique. Get out of my way, Kakuzu. I can't control my body. Looking in the direction of the sound, he saw Fei Duan waving his long and narrow three-part scythe as he sped over. The cold light flashed as it cut through iron like it was mud, erasing and splitting any matter that came into contact with it. The target of the attack was Kakuzu. You can control Haiden to attack me. It's a good bloodstain, but it's useless. Looking at Shikamaru Nara, who was sweating profusely, Kakuzu then turned his head and stared at Haiden without fear. His expression was as usual, filled with eternal indifference. Pay the price for your arrogance. Shikamaru Nara's eyes were filled with killing intent. Deep in the ground, the black shadow was rushing toward Kakuzu's feet. Asuma was Shikamaru's teacher and friend. Now that he could kill the enemy with his own hands, his heart was particularly happy. Ka. When Kakuzu was about to dodge Haiden's attack, the ground under his feet suddenly cracked. The dark shadow was like a spirit snake that wrapped around his feet tightly, making him unable to move. Haiden's scythe was about to split Kakuzu into two. Hey. They can't be so useless. It's too funny to be killed like this. White Zetsu's face was full of disbelief. After seeing that Kakuzu was tightly bound, he exclaimed out loud. Kakuzu and Haiden were just teasing them. If they were killed by a group of hairy brats, the S-class ninjas would be too worthless. Black Zetsu didn't care. The other party was just a group of hairy brats. I may disappoint you, Black Zetsu. They were really killed by this group of brats. Dustless heard this and smiled. He scoffed at Black Zetsu's words. Kakuzu and Haiden were indeed killed by Team 10 and 7. Especially Haiden's death was the most tragic. Dustless looked at the zombie duo with pity. The end of these two people was already doomed. Even if Dustless didn't need to do it himself, the end result would be death. In the future, they will become a member of the Edo Tensei army. Let's go, Zetsu. Dustless simply retracted his gaze and directly turned to leave. These two people were doomed to fall here. White Zetsu only needed to leave some clones to collect their corpses. It's a pity that this was a good show. White Zetsu reluctantly retracted his gaze and followed Dustless's footsteps. Of course, he left his clones in advance. After all, he still needs the corpses of these two people for future plans. Hiss! Dustless, who had just turned around and was about to leave, suddenly heard a faint hissing sound. Looking around, he saw a figure in a red robe standing quietly behind him. This person's attire was extremely disgusting. His skin was deathly pale, and he wore transparent glasses. His skin was like the scales of a snake, and the thick white snake behind him crawled out of his body. The hissing sound came from the snake's forked mouth. How could it be him? And he seems to have learned sage techniques. Frowning, Dustless secretly thought. The person who came was Orochimaru's former subordinate, Kabuto. Oh no, maybe now he should change his name. He should be called Kabuto. Chapter 292. At this moment, Kabuto's appearance was extremely disgusting. The crystal scales were clearly visible. His body was white, and he liked to stick out his tongue and lick his lips like Orochimaru. The dark red thick robe covered Kabuto's body, blocking the invasion of the sun, and snakes like dark and humid places. And Kabuto doesn't like to live in the sun. There is a road to heaven, but you don't walk. There is no door to hell. You have a lot of courage, the subordinates of a traitor, and you dare to come to the door. You have a lot of courage. After seeing the figure hidden under the robe, Black Zetsu's face changed dramatically, and after staring at Kabuto for a long time, he said with a strange smile. Poor Orochimaru calculated for a lifetime, and in the end, it was easy for you. It's really ironic. The success and failure of Orochimaru came from the hands of Kabuto. I'm afraid that Orochimaru didn't expect that everything he did in his life was for others. This old guy is really good at acting. It's a pity that the Best Actor award is not given to him. Wu-chan secretly glanced at Heiju and secretly smacked his tongue. Black Zetsu was a natural performer, deceiving people all over the world. Whether it was acting or the essence of the performance, he played the skills of an actor incisively and vividly. Perhaps in front of Dustless and Madara, Black Zetsu regarded himself as an insignificant person, and the identity of Kagaya's third son was probably long gone. Acting could only be considered to have reached the pinnacle of perfection when one acted until they believed it to be true. I don't like to beat around the bush. Say what you want, Kabuto. His eyes fell on Kabuto's body. Dustless asked. His momentum was restrained, blending with nature, and his voice was slightly vicissitudes of life. So strong. Big snake pocket under the thick robe frowned slightly, and the corner of his eyes flashed with a strange color. The snake eyes narrowed, carefully sizing up Dustless. After a while, they suddenly emitted a cold light. My answer is, of course, to take your life. The squinted pupils suddenly opened, shooting a cold killing intent, and then Kabuto's body lost its texture, leaving a faint afterimage in the place where he originally stood. As for the main body, with just this level of skill, he was already close to dustless. How fast? How can a mere peddler have such amazing strength? Not only was White Zetsu shocked, but even the usually silent Black Zetsu had a look of disbelief. His eyes widened, and he looked at Do in surprise. When he looked up, his vicious gaze was even more vicious than Orochimaru's in the past. Aoo aoo, hiss hiss, the ferocious white snake went straight for Dustless's face. It opened its bloody mouth and exposed its sharp fangs. Under the sunlight, the fangs gleamed coldly. They could easily bite through steel. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. I didn't expect that not only did you seize everything from Orochimaru, you even learned the immortal techniques that he couldn't learn. You actually had the means to persuade that old snake. It seems that you're not bad, kid. Pucci. A sharp golden light shot out from his finger and directly smashed the snake's head into a bloody mess. At the same time, Dustless's eyes emitted a cold light, and his killing intent began to soar. Chakra went berserk, overflowing with a huge breath of life. Really a troublesome monster. Looking at the broken snake head, Kabuto snorted, and his body quickly retreated. His hands formed a seal, and the majestic chakra in his body began to surge. When he was about to use a technique to capture Dustless, thick branches and vines suddenly drilled out from under his feet and tightly bound him like a python. This is Mokuton. No, this is Mokuton. His doubtful expression turned into determination and certainty, and Kabuto's face lit up. In the past, Orochimaru used Hashirama's cells to do experiments, and he also had some understanding of Mokuton. Worthy of being the monster that Orochimaru-sama can only sigh in his heart. You even have such a powerful Kekkei Genkai like Mokuton. Noticing the green vines binding his body, Kabuto wasn't stingy with his praise. Mokuton and Dustless working together was definitely the perfect combination. Sure enough, he awakened Mokuton. White and Black Zetsu were unusually calm. Dustless used to cooperate with Uchiha Madara, and a large number of Hashirama's cells were integrated into his body, so it was normal that he could use Mokuton. You want to absorb my chakra? How can I let you do as you wish? Slightly frowning, Kabuto was surprised that the green vines binding his body were swallowing chakra, and he sneered again and again, looking at Dustless, his eyes filled with pride and contempt, and his body strangely melted. Like melting ice, his 1-meter-tall body turned into a puddle of water in the blink of an eye. Orochimaru-sama collected the Kekkei Genkai of various clans, and there is a lot of content. In fact, many years ago, Orochimaru began to plan to have the same ability as you, Uchiha Dustless. The puddle of water on the ground rippled and quickly shrank, turning into a figure with dense scales all over his body. There was no doubt that it was Kabuto. Now my body is in existence beyond human knowledge. You can't hurt me, and you can't kill me. Kabuto looked at the indifferent Dustless, raised his arms and shouted loudly. His tone was unprecedentedly arrogant. Only Dustless had the ability to be immune to all physical attacks. And from now on, Kabuto would be the second person to have it. This was the power of science. There is no trick in the world that can be absolutely immune to physical attacks, including my ability. Dustless just faintly shook his head. Even if he didn't need Haki, as long as the mysterious power of gravity appeared, the invincibility of the fruit would be broken. A mere Hozuki clan's water transformation jutsu dares to say that you are immune to all attacks. Should I say that you are ignorant or naive? I'm afraid that even Orochimaru wouldn't dare to boast as shamelessly as you. It seems that after successfully practicing Sage Mode, you have forgotten how much you are worth, Kabuto. Chapter 293. Kabuto just frowned at Dustless's words. Not only did he have the water transformation jutsu that could easily ignore physical attacks, but he also investigated Uzumaki Karen's body and implanted the cells of the Uzumaki's body into his body. As long as he was injured, he would be able to recover. With the strongest ninjutsu that could ignore physical attacks, and a body that could recover when injured, Kabuto didn't think that he was worse than Dustless. You have a sharp tongue. It's useless to show off. I will capture you and turn you into the most perfect material. Kabuto stared at Dustless ferociously. Including Zetsu, they were all perfect experimental materials. None of them could escape. His snake eyes narrowed slightly, and Kabuto's line of sight locked onto Dustless. His calm and natural appearance made Kabuto particularly angry. He had a feeling of being treated as a small character not worth mentioning. In a battle between powerhouses, one should be completely focused, and not so calm and composed, as if Kabuto Orochi was already in his grasp. First of all, Kabuto's temperament was completely defeated. Since your physique is immune to physical attacks, then how about this? Seeing Kabuto not moving for a long time, Dustless obviously lost his patience and changed from defense to offense. Chakra surged in his body, and in less than a second, a blazing fire wave came out of his mouth. Fire release, great fire annihilation. The flames reached a diameter of tens of meters, and the temperature increased by hundreds of times. The blazing high temperature evaporated all the flowers and trees, turning them into ashes. Under such high temperature, even water could only evaporate into nothingness. How can this guy's attainments in fire release be so high? His face was filled with shock. His eyes were wide open, and his mind was in chaos. Facing such a terrifying sea of fire, his entire soul was trembling. His hair stood on end as he looked at the boundless sea of fire in disgust. At the same time, he was desperately erupting chakra in his body. The so-called jutsu that could ignore physical attacks was forgotten. What a joke! Such a terrifying flame would only evaporate faster if it turned into water. What a powerful nature chakra. But this guy's speed of entering sage mode is really fast. Dustless's eyes narrowed as he felt the natural power rushing through the air. Ninjas like Jiraiya and Namikaze Minato needed a certain amount of time to enter sage mode. But Kabuto only took a very short time. Senjutsu, no chance reincarnation. The lifeless charred ground suddenly surged, as if it had been given life in an instant. It began to rise rapidly, turning into an abnormally strong wall, tightly protecting the snake within. It was like an iron bucket that was watertight. The flames outside was suddenly blocked, and couldn't move forward, and could only burn in front of the large wall. The wall and burned it black. After a long while the grand flame extinguishing gradually extinguished. Kabuto Cave's senjutsu is really good. Dustless nodded secretly, and his pupils splashed with faint ripples. Looking directly at the defensive wall formed in the blink of an eye, he couldn't help but think highly of Kabuto Cave's senjutsu. It was obvious that the group of unassuming snakes were quite capable. Dustless understood the effect of this jutsu in his previous life. It can give life to inanimate objects, and it is a reincarnation ninjutsu that can be controlled. It is not a simple ninjutsu that uses chakra to control objects, and under the effect of this jutsu, the inanimate objects move quickly. But that's it. Raising his eyelids, the corner of his mouth raised a contemptuous arc. Dustless looked calm, and he didn't put the iron wall in his eyes at all, and he threw out countless dense golden light. Yasukani no Magatama. The golden energy tide surged forward, and the sturdy city walls were immediately eroded by the golden light. Dust flew up, and the previously intact walls were now filled with holes. The holes were like the stars in the sky. It was impossible to count how many holes there were. Boom, boom, boom. The wall finally fell to the ground. Dustless's cruel attack just now gave it a fatal injury, and it no longer had the ability to defend. Just one move is enough to deal with it. What a monster! But it seems I didn't choose the wrong partner. Seeing the defensive wall that was controlled by senjutsu being destroyed in a snap of a finger, Kabuto's eyes not only didn't have any fear, but instead flashed with a dense light, and he stared at Dustless with fanatical eyes, especially his fearless and ant-like eyes, which made Kabuto even more determined. Staring at Dustless with malicious intent, the majestic chakra continued to pour out, and Kabuto showed no signs of stopping. Rumble. Accompanied by a loud rumbling sound, the ground under Dustless's feet suddenly surged, like a whirlpool in the deep sea, madly and rapidly rotating, forming a huge black hole that swallowed Dustless. And on the other side of the black hole, was the door to the underworld. Giving life to something that doesn't have life. Looks like it's the same senjutsu as before. Dustless jumped up and stared at the earth whirlpool below, and couldn't help but frown. The huge whirlpool swallowed everything around it, as if it was an ancient demon god that had been given life, and if it couldn't taint it, then it couldn't reincarnate. This person is very ambitious. Getting rid of him now might not be a bad thing. His eyes flashed with anger. Dustless decided to get rid of Kabuto, this eyesore. It was not a good thing to let such an ambitious person live. Especially Kabuto's ambition was not inferior to Obito and Madara. He wanted to become a legendary dragon. Dragons were actually no different from gods, and belonged to the category of legendary existences. In other words, those who wanted to become dragons actually wanted to become gods. You think you can step on thousands of living beings and show off your prowess? Dream on. He sneered at Kabuto. The murderous aura in Dustless's eyes became deeper and deeper. His scarlet eyes shot out a hellish bloody aura. The evil eternal Mangekyo Sharingan focused on Kabuto's body, and the corners of his mouth rose into an evil smile. Orochimaru's death is very suitable for you. Chapter 294. Gently raising his eyes, looking at Dustless in the sky, Kabuto finally understood Orochimaru's feelings. The most tragic thing in the world is this. A perfect specimen is right in front of you, but you're helpless to find that you don't have the ability to dissect the perfect specimen. It's really a tragedy. It's not too late to try again. In short, I can't let go of such a rare opportunity. After hesitating for a moment, Kabuto was resolute and decisive. The cooked duck was leaving him just like that. How could Kabuto be willing to do that? Chakra gushed out, and just as he was about to fight with Dustless again, his body suddenly burned with black flames. This is the Mangekyo Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. It's really strong. The intense burning pain spread all over his body, and Kabuto was slightly stunned, looking at the black flames burning on his back. His face was full of surprise, and the desire in his eyes was undisguised. The power of the Sharingan is known throughout the world, especially Dustless's eyes. It's even more difficult to estimate. This kind of power is something that everyone wants. Orochimaru was like that. And now Kabuto, who inherited everything from him, was no exception. But how can this kind of flame burn me? I'm a snake sage. Glancing at the black flames on his back, Kabuto showed a contemptuous smile, and immediately the skin on his back suddenly dried and cracked, and the black flames slowly fell off, still molting. The substitution jutsu is very useful. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, slightly frowned. The substitution jutsu is the best ninjutsu to resist the Amaterasu. Orochimaru and Sasuke used this jutsu to resist the erosion of the Amaterasu again and again. I didn't expect this little bug to have some skills. Dustless looked down at Kabuto's ugly face with a smile, and said indifferently. Looking at Kabuto, he showed a teasing smile like a cat playing with a mouse. That kind of look is really unpleasant. Raising his eyebrows, Kabuto's pale face suddenly became gloomy. Dustless's smile made his whole body uncomfortable. It was obviously a hunter in high spirits teasing a dying prey. Do you still think I'm the same small character from before? In the past, he was just Orochimaru's subordinate. To put it bluntly, he was just Orochimaru's henchman. However, things were very different now. Kabuto was naturally one of the protagonists of this world. Whether it was his current strength or his trump cards, they were all better than Orochimaru. Dustless was still looking at him like an ant. How could he be angry? His body once again gathered rich of natural chakra. You're asking for it. Seeing Kabuto's nature power gather, Wu Chen sneered even more. Kabuto dared to show off his immortal technique in front of him. He really didn't know where his confidence came from. But you already have no chance, Kabuto. Looking down indifferently at Kabuto, who was eager to give it a try, Dustless put his hands together, and the boundless chakra gushed out again. Just as he was about to give him a fatal blow, Kabuto's voice sounded, and his words were shocking. Dustless didn't recover for a long time. Why don't we try to cooperate? Kabuto stared at Dustless, his words shocking everyone. His tone was like an ancient well, calm and composed. His confident appearance made people unable to help but be stunned. Fuku's confident appearance clearly showed that he was in the bag. Hearing this, Dustless just looked indifferently at Kabuto, then closed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, "The people who want to cooperate with me are like carp crossing the river. Unfortunately, your name isn't among them, Kabuto." Raising his eyes, Dustless looked at Kabuto indifferently and refused without hesitation. "Kabuto? That's a pretty good name." Kabuto's eyes flashed, and looking at Dustless's eyes, he said bluntly, "Of the people who want to cooperate with you, I'm naturally one of them, and I'm going to be your most important partner." His tone was full of confidence. Kabuto wasn't worried about whether Dustless would agree to the alliance or not. He could see that Dustless was the kind of person with ambition. He absolutely wouldn't refuse to cooperate with him because of personal grudges. Kabuto and Dustless's goal was almost the same. They both wanted to conquer the world. Wishful thinking. Indifferently looking at Kabuto, Dustless sneered in his heart. Precisely because the two of them had the same goal, Dustless couldn't cooperate with this kind of person. Especially in this situation, he could take advantage of this opportunity to kill him. "If you and I cooperate, there are only a few dozen S-class ninjas in Akatsuki. The rest of them have almost no fighting power. I can use my subordinates to make up for your manpower," Kabuto said confidently, as if he was sure that Dustless would agree, but he was doomed to be disappointed. "I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not interested in cooperating with you. Your so-called subordinates should be the legacy of Orochimaru, the strong corpses he plundered. Although it's very tempting, but don't you think that as long as I kill you, I can get everything from you?" Staring indifferently at Kabuto, Dustless asked with a murderous aura. His majestic murderous aura wasn't concealed at all. The terrifying murderous aura directly dyed the entire sky into a gloomy blood-red color, as if a god was enraged. The entire world was pervaded with an unprecedented pressure. Kabuto just smiled. He had an important bargaining chip, and the Kage corpses were just appetizers. What came next was the main course. "I'll give you the heaviest main course," Kabuto smiled strangely, and suddenly made a hand seal. The ground also burst open, and an ancient coffin broke out from the depths of the ground, filling the air with the smell of decay. Chapter 295. The ancient coffin came into view, and it was filled with the smell of time. At first glance, one could tell that it wasn't an ordinary thing, especially the ancient aura on it. Even after the passage of many years, the invincible aura lingering on it could still be felt vaguely. There was no need to think about it to know who was in the coffin. Only Hashirama and Madara had such a level of power. Now that the corpses of Hashirama and other Hokage were in Dustless's hands, it was self-evident who was in the coffin. Uchiha Madara. No wonder I couldn't find him for so long. He actually ran into this kid's hands. Dustless's eyes were like torches. He was sure that the person in the coffin was definitely Madara. Kakaka. As if he was afraid that Dustless didn't know who was in the coffin, Kabuto snorted, and the lid of the coffin suddenly fell off, revealing a very young middle-aged man. The person sleeping in the coffin had black hair, handsome facial features, and was wearing dark red armor. Even if he was just lying quietly, he was showing a domineering aura. There was no doubt that it was Uchiha Madara. Damn Black Zetsu. Seeing this, Dustless cursed in his heart. He knew that Black Zetsu deliberately gave this to Kabuto, whereas Madara's body, Black Zetsu is the only one in the world who knows. This old guy didn't want to help Madara from the beginning. He just wanted to use him. "Is my strength enough to make you trust me so much? You really are the kind of person who understands the importance of caution. Fine. I will fulfill your wish and cooperate with this brat once. Let's see who will have the last laugh." Dustless began to plan to cooperate with Kabuto. This kid controlled a large number of Edo Tensei. If he didn't pull him to his side, there would be a lot of trouble. Even if the Edo Tensei army was useless to Dustless, White Zetsu was the natural enemy of the Edo Tensei. That's the only way. The corner of his eyes swept past Kabuto. Dustless made a decision. Although there was the suspicion of asking a tiger for its skin, with Kabuto's small appetite, It would be 100 years before he could swallow Dustless. There's no problem with working together, but, staring at Kabuto's face, Dustless snorted, too lazy to talk nonsense, and said coldly, I still can't trust you. White Zetsu's clone must stay by your side to monitor you. If you agree from now on, we will be allies. Kabuto frowned. He did have a plan, and it was nothing more than the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Now that Dustless sent White Zetsu's clone to monitor him, it would be very inconvenient to take the Sharingan. No problem. After thinking for a while, Kabuto gritted his teeth and made a decision. White Zetsu's clone was just a rookie among rookies. When he took the Sharingan, he could easily kill him and then betray the Akatsuki. Moreover, Kabuto didn't intend to take the Sharingan now. Anyway, Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Sasuke couldn't escape from them. As for Dustless's Manjikyu Sharingan, Kabuto didn't think much about it. People must have self-awareness. He also realized that he and Dustless were aware of it. And even if he wanted to take the Sharingan, it would be in the future, not now. Happy cooperation. Showing a warm smile towards Dustless, Kabuto politely stretched out his right hand. However, unfortunately, Dustless didn't intend to shake hands with him. He directly ignored him, didn't even look at him, treated him like air. Who knows how many dead snakes he touched, how many monster experiments he did. Dustless didn't want to touch him. Damn Black Zetsu. Sooner or later I will tear you to pieces. For the time being, I will let you live for 2 more days. The monstrous killing intent in his heart calmed down. Dustless secretly thought, Uchiha Madara's body has been kept by Black Zetsu, but this old guy gave it to Kabuto instead of his ally Dustless. As for what method, I'm afraid only ghosts know. This old guy wants Kabuto use Madara to suppress me, naive. Immediately understanding Black Zetsu's meaning, Dustless secretly sneered. I'm afraid that the reason why Black Zetsu gave Madara's body to Kabuto was to use it to deter Dustless. But he didn't know that the current Dustless was not afraid of Madara. And Dustless was not the fragile fledgling of the past. Even if he met Madara at his peak, Dustless could fight him. Ah, it seems that someone is coming. Do you want to kill them all? The perception in Sage mode was naturally extremely strong, and Kabuto naturally felt that it was Konoha's ninja who came to support Team 10. Immediately, he stretched out his disgusting snake head and licked his lips, which was particularly creepy. Of course. His line of sight faintly locked onto the 10th squad that was fighting in the distance, as well as Fei Duan and Kakuzu, who were fighting with them with all their might. His face was covered with frost that seemed to be isolated from the world, and his voice that was as calm as an ancient well resounded through the sky. Konoha's ninja, including Haiden and Kakuzu, kill them all. Wu Chen's squinted eyes suddenly enlarged. His voice was full of murderous intent. His cold eyes were no different from a dead man's. There was no emotion that a human should have. Dustless did not have the slightest mercy to Kakuzu and Haiden, as well as the members of Team 10 and Kakashi. According to his estimation, he didn't have much confidence in Mei. Until today, he still didn't have confidence in Mei, and only by using force to pressure the Cloud Village to tell him where Mei went. Even Haiden and Kakuzu are killed. What a cold man. Hearing this, Kabuto stared at Dustless in surprise. He didn't expect this guy to be so cold-blooded, and even kill his own people. But soon, he laughed strangely and said gloomily, if those 2 guys were killed by the people they usually look down on the most, their faces must be rich. Chapter 296. Zetsu silently followed behind Dustless. It was not good for him to interrupt. White Zetsu did not approve of working together with Kabuto. Just looking at his disgusting appearance was enough to make people want to vomit, not to mention monitoring him closely. Thinking about it, White Zetsu felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but shiver. In particular, the current Kabuto was even worse than Orochimaru. He was far more disgusting and crazy than Orochimaru. The scales on Kabuto's skin reminded White Zetsu of some kind of creature. I really don't know what Dustless-sama is thinking, choosing to cooperate with such a barbaric creature. White Zetsu seemed to be thinking of the bitter life in the future, and complained with dissatisfaction. Whether it was Orochimaru or Kabuto, White Zetsu didn't like people who were related to snakes. It doesn't matter if you don't know now. Later, you will know how brilliant Dustless Sama's plan is. Ignoring White Zetsu, Black Zetsu laughed. His voice was particularly hoarse, obviously full of other meanings. Madara's body was naturally given to Kabuto by Black Zetsu. He originally wanted to give it to Kabuto in the future, but Dustless's growth was beyond his imagination, and someone had to stop him. The original candidate was Orochimaru, but now that Orochimaru was dead, only Kabuto, who came later, temporarily replaced him. However, the effect was quite good, and Dustless did indeed agree to cooperate with Kabuto. Dustless Sama's power is unparalleled. Naturally, he can suppress Kabuto. It seemed that after seeing Otsutsuki Kagaya resurrected intact, Black Zetsu laughed mockingly, and there was a hint of ridicule and gloating in his tone. His sight seemed to have crossed the layers of time and space, seeing Dustless, Madara, and Obito's sad expression when they knew the truth. For Black Zetsu, this was definitely the most unforgettable scene, and also the reward for his hard work over the years. Uchiha Dustless, Uchiha Itachi, and Uchiha Sasuke. Not only you three brothers, but the whole world will be my test ground in the future. His eyes flashed with a scorching light, and Kabuto said in his heart. Kabuto inherited everything from Orochimaru, including Orochimaru's research materials, as well as his body and will. In any case, as long as it was something Orochimaru had, Kabuto inherited it all. Orochimaru's goal was to evolve into a legendary creature, a dragon. The dragon was a supreme existence through and through. This kind of creature that only existed in myths and legends could summon the wind and rain. Just like Dustless, they could soar through the void at will and shatter the earth with a snap of their fingers. Furthermore, the dragon had broken free from the restrictions of the 6 realms of reincarnation and was immortal. His strength was at least on the same level as the 10-tailed beast, or even higher. Your ambition is not small. A mere beast with scales and horns wants to transcend. You overestimate yourself. There are many paths to godhood, but there is no place for you, Kabuto Orochi. The corner of his eyes fell on Kabuto, and Dustless's eyes flashed with ridicule. He secretly shook his head. A soft-bodied creature that danced with rats also wanted to shake the earth. It was very funny. Although Kabuto Orochi had the mentality of a dragon, for example, he had many horns on his head when he entered Sage Mode. But it couldn't be said that he had evolved into a dragon. In Dustless's eyes, the Sage Mode Kabuto Orochi was just a slightly stronger bug. Even if one day Kabuto Orochi evolved into a dragon, it would still look like a god. The real dragon originated from the inheritance in the depths of the blood and soul. That was the nobility of life, and not the evolution of a beast like the white phosphorus Orochi. His heart was pitiable, and his ambition should be punished. As a mortal, he had the heart to become a god. This lofty aspiration was indeed worthy of praise, but such an arrogant idea was tantamount to indirectly touching Dustless's bottom line. After losing his value, Kabuto Orochi would be Dustless's first target to clean up. There is also Black Zetsu. Thinking of Black Zetsu, Dustless's ridicule became more obvious. That old fellow planned everything, but he met a more powerful transcendent person than him. Looking at the crowd, Dustless was the only one who knew Black Zetsu's plan. When I devour Kagaya, I also want to see your face when you grit your teeth. Laughing, Dustless's footsteps became lighter and more powerful. It would be good if he could find Nibi's Jinchuriki, but if he couldn't, he could only create it himself. As for what method he used, it was not for others to know. It's really strange. What are they so happy about? White Zetsu's eyes were blank. He wasn't very good at scheming, but he could see that whether it was Dustless or Kabuto, they were very happy. Even Black Zetsu's other half gave him a feeling of joy. Do we really have to kill them both? After all, they were partners in the past. Looking at Haiden and Kakuzu, White Zetsu was quite complicated. Humans are not plants, they can't be emotionless. Except for Black Zetsu, no one here could completely wipe out their inner feelings. It was the same for Kabuto and Dustless. It was precisely because humans had complex emotions that they were humans. If one day they completely lost their emotions, they would just live like a walking corpse. For example, Black Zetsu now. Although he also had his own emotions, in the end, it was just Kagaya's will. Since you can't do it, leave this kind of thing to me. I'm very interested in the zombie duo in the Akatsuki. Kabuto licked his lips and laughed eerily. He was passionate about human experiments, and those bodies that couldn't be broken no matter how much he played with them were naturally more interested. Kabuto! Dustless turned his head and glanced at him. His eyes were calm as he stared at Kakuzu and Haiden, who were fighting with Konoha's team. 10, including Kakuzu. Kill them all. Hearing this, Kabuto frowned, and his face flashed with displeasure. Dustless and he had a cooperative relationship, but his tone was commanding. However, for my precious experiment material, I will reluctantly listen to you this time. Chapter 297. Kabuto's goal wasn't immortality. The reason why he pursued immortality was because he needed enough time to explore the truth of the world. Although I'm very unhappy about your life, I'll reluctantly agree to your conditions for the sake of these experimental subjects. However, their corpses are mine. Kabuto's eyes glowed with a green luster as he said with extreme thirst. The bodies of these people are not bad, they are mine. In your dreams, they are members of the organization. They are ghosts of the organization. Black Zetsu stared at Kabuto with dissatisfaction, as he refuted mercilessly. With Dustless here, Kabuto wouldn't be able to kill anyone. At the same time, he was cursing Kabuto's greed. The number of Edo Tensei in his hands was definitely not less than 3 digits. It doesn't matter, if you have the ability, go ahead and take it. Wu Chen said expressionlessly, as he looked at Kabuto indifferently. He closed his eyes and stood there motionlessly. He didn't look like he was going to make a move. He signaled Kabuto to take it himself if he had the ability. Dustless-sama. It doesn't matter, Zetsu. Waving his hand, Dustless raised his eyelids and looked at the void in front of him. Then he said casually, "Since we have become allies, I also hope that you will use their bodies to deal with the enemy." Since he has already joined forces with Kabuto, as long as the Edo Tensei army is used on the enemy, it doesn't matter who has it. Of course, this is not a problem. Kabuto breathed a sigh of relief, and the rock in his heart disappeared. If Dustless didn't back down, he could only admit defeat. After all, Dustless's strength was obvious to all, and the cooperation between the two sides was based on strength. In other words, whoever has the bigger fist has the final say. Since that's the case, it would be impolite for me to accept them. Afraid that Dustless would go back on his words, Kabuto roared out like a cannonball, heading straight toward Haiden and Kakuzu, as well as the people of Konoha's ninja village. You don't know what's good for you, but it's good to see you make a fool of yourself. Do you think Kakuzu, Haiden and Konoha's ninjas are worthless? How foolish. Seeing Orochi Baguette burst out, and turned into a divine rainbow roaring out, Wu Chen's indifferent face raised a wicked smile, making Black Zetsu and White Zetsu uncomfortable with goosebumps. They all sighed inwardly, that this snake immortal was going to be unlucky. Kakuzu and Haiden were S-class ninjas and Kakashi wasn't weak either. His monocular Mangekyo wasn't something to be trifled with. There was no doubt about the strength of Kakuzu and Haiden, especially the group of ninjas from Konoha. The fact that they were able to fight the zombie duo indirectly showed that they were extraordinary and powerful. In particular, there were a lot of Konoha's ninjas coming to support them. Even if Kabuto's strength was unprecedented, he would have to lose 2 of his canine teeth if he wanted to take down this group of people. This is a good show, White Zetsu said with a smile. To be able to see Kabuto make a fool of himself, there was nothing more exciting than watching Kabuto get beaten up. Wu Chen also looked at this scene in ridicule, and a gloating expression emerged on his face. He looked quite different from his usual self, just like a little kid who loved to play pranks. Well, where did these stinky snakes come from? The 2 groups of people who were fighting stopped one after another. They looked at the huge snake swarm that was flying over from the ground in confusion. Both of them showed a cautious expression without prior agreement. Kakuzu, it's not Orochimaru, is it? Fei Duan frowned and spoke in a rather displeased tone. There was a hint of disgust in his voice, as he looked at the group of snakes in the distance. Countless small snakes gathered together and pressed over like a huge wave. The number was simply impossible to estimate. I don't know the specific situation, but I'm afraid no one other than Orochimaru can easily use this kind of jutsu. Kakuzu frowned, and his eyes were cautious. Orochimaru was the kind of person who was cautious. If it was really him, then he must have other tricks up his sleeve. Kakashi, sensei, this seems to be the same as during the Chunin exam. Nara Shikamaru's thoughts were immersed in his memories. Thinking of Orochimaru's sudden attack on Konoha during the Chunin exam, he couldn't help but be cautious. Yes, it's most likely Orochimaru. This is bad. Kakashi's scarlet Manjikyu Sharingan stared at the sea of snakes in front of him. Kakashi's heart clenched, and he felt extremely depressed. He subconsciously looked at Kakuzu and Haiden, who were talking about Orochimaru. Orochimaru once had a close relationship with these two. Let's clean up this group of snakes first. After narrowing his eyes and pondering for a while, Kakuzu was the first to speak. No one can tolerate countless white snakes swimming around them while they are fighting. For the time being, let's clean up the white snakes, but be careful of the Akatsuki duo. Kakuzu also said firmly. They were surrounded by dense snakes. And even if they wanted to take the opportunity to escape, they had to clean up the snakes first. Naturally, the two opposing sides began to clean up this group of giant snakes at the same time. Boom! Boom boom! All kinds of ninjutsu began to roar, intertwining with bright colors. After all, they were all animals. Even if there were more of them, they were still the targets of torture. For a time, the scene was bloody, and the ground was full of snake heads. This is not over yet. It's just the dessert before the meal. Next is the main course. Kakuzu frowned, looking at the snake heads on the ground, and said indifferently, "This group of good experimental materials, he won't let them go in vain." Most importantly, there was still Dustless, this spectator-like ally, watching from behind. If his technique was so easily broken, it was inevitable that their strategic alliance would decline. And Kakuzu also felt that Dustless will look down on him. Let's add some more seasoning. Chapter 298. Dustless stared at Kabuto's back with a smile. This kid in Sage mode was really strong, but it would be troublesome to deal with this group of people. At least, Dustless thought so. Sure enough, it's Orochimaru. You are Kabuto? Kakashi stared at the figure in the crimson robe with surprise. He thought it was Orochimaru, but when he looked closely, he saw that the thin figure was wearing glasses. Orochimaru didn't wear glasses. Yo, Kakashi, I didn't expect to meet in this way. The world is unpredictable. Seeing that Kakashi had instantly recognized him, Kabuto put on his signature smile and tried to maintain a gentle expression. However, with the scales all over his body, he looked extremely sinister and terrifying. The current Kabuto was more thorough than Orochimaru. He was just a snake in human skin. What's going on with his form? It's exactly the same as Orochimaru, even more thorough. Kakashi raised his eyebrows, his eyes were full of vigilance, and he assumed a defensive posture. No matter what the origin of Kabuto was, in short, he wasn't a good person, especially his new form. It gave Kakashi an unprecedented pressure. This inexplicable pressure was even greater than Orochimaru's. I was wondering who it was. It turned out to be the traitor's subordinate, but his strength seems to have increased a lot. Fei Duan said with a condescending attitude, while carrying the three-part scythe. His face was full of contempt. Kakuzu's green eyes emitted a cold luster. But his face was heavy, he said in a deep voice. Don't be careless. This kid seems to be a bit strange. Orochimaru's human experiments can't be underestimated. He may be the kind that succeeded. Orochimaru was indeed a genius, and the most talented kind. Underestimating him would definitely lead to a backlash. Whether it's a dragon or a snake, we'll know once we try. Haiden didn't care. His eyes emitted a crimson light and burst out. A strong gust of wind, filled with killing intent, blew out. Flying Duan, holding his blood-red scythe, whistled over like a gust of wind. A ripple splashed in the void. It was the crimson scythe sweeping over. So fast, Kabuto's pupil shrank slightly, and he quickly dodged, holding his legs, avoiding the fatal light. At the same time, the snake head behind his robe went straight for Haydn's face. It was worth mentioning that this ferocious snake head was easily broken by Dustless before, but it strangely came back to life. I knew you would use this trick. With a scornful laugh, Flying Segment remained calm and collected. He calmly turned his body to the side and easily dodged the python's attack. His arm suddenly shook, and the scythe that had missed its target rose up. The cold light easily pierced through the python's head. Poochie! The stench of blood filled the air, and a ferocious snake head appeared on the ground. Sure enough, they're not easy to deal with. At the same time, a new snake head with a new head, with a new head, a new snake head, a new head again, a new head again, a new head, a new head again, new head. The contempt in his eyes quickly disappeared, and Kabuto also began to be cautious. He had naturally investigated the information of the members of the Akatsuki, and Haydn was the fastest person in the organization. But his speed was still so fast that ordinary ninjas didn't even have time to react. They were directly killed. Fast reaction, clean movement. Body is exactly the same as Orochimaru. It seems that this kid has indeed undergone some kind of transformation. Seeing the snake head that was cut off grow again, Haydn carefully muttered to himself in a low voice. Abandoning Kabuto's face, and not deliberately observing, it was no different from Orochimaru. Take this opportunity, let's quickly evacuate. Seeing the opportunity, Kakashi decided to retreat. This confrontation obviously didn't have any advantage. As for Asuma's death, he could only helplessly say sorry. There was still a long way to go. There was no need to die now. Although the people of Team 10 were unwilling, they could only endure the humiliation. And at present, they could only temporarily avoid the sharp edge. Whether it was Kabuto, Haydn, or Kakuzu, they couldn't touch them. Looking at each other, they didn't turn around to escape. Still want to escape? This time you will die without a doubt. Don't even think about escaping. With a cold smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless saw that Kakashi and others had already escaped. He sneered again and again. He had let them go time and time again. This time he must completely annihilate them in one fell swoop. His tall and straight figure flashed with a golden luster, and Wu Chen's body began to gradually dissipate into the void. He turned into a golden ray of light and flew straight in the direction of Kakashi and the others. In the dense jungle, several black shadows frantically rushed forward. The speed was so fast that it was impossible to capture with the naked eye. The distance has been pulled far enough, but it's time to rest. Turning his head and seeing that there was no one following behind him, Kakashi was relieved. His body landed on a branch, sweating and gasping for breath. Kakashi's nerves were tense, his eyes spread out, quietly taking in the changes in the expressions of the three people of Team 10. He saw that their pupils were lax. Their expressions were like zombies, as if their souls were extracted. They were living in a daze. Even the most resourceful Nara Shikamaru was full of despair and pain. Sooner or later a blood debt will be paid with blood. There is no need to care about a momentary success or failure. Heavily exhaling a turbid breath, he also knew the pain of not being able to kill the enemy, but the reality was so cruel. One day in the future, I will personally tear them into pieces. Nara Shikamaru, who struggled out of despair, said hatefully, completely different from his usual gentle and wise appearance. I'm really sorry. Kakuzu and Haydn will indeed die, but they will not be killed by you people, because you will fall soon, and it will start with you, young man. The mysterious man wearing a black trench coat fell from the sky. The golden sword in his hand swept straight towards Shikamaru. Chapter 299. There was a cool breeze coming from the jungle. The bell tied to the mysterious man's cloak was gently blown, and there was a clear and melodious sound of nature. The beautiful rhythm jumped out of the notes of death, and what followed was the most primitive barbaric killing of human beings. Dustless's eyes were cold, and his face was expressionless. The Kusanagi sword in his hand was surging with a monstrous momentum, revealing a sharp edge that could cut through everything. He mercilessly went straight to Shikamaru Nara's head. Am I dead? Shikamaru Nara's heart was calm when he sensed the sharp edge that was about to crush him. He calmly closed his eyes and quietly waited for death. The shadow of his former teacher Asuma suddenly appeared in his mind. Maybe death is the final atonement, the best relief. The corner of his mouth revealed a relieved smile. After Asuma, who was both his teacher and friend, died, he often had nightmares. As long as life and death disappeared, all these nightmares would end, and he would also be free and no longer suffer the pain of death. This is not like you, Shikamaru. Death can't solve everything. You still need to avenge Asuma. A tired and haggard voice sounded, pulling Shikamaru's thoughts back. He opened his eyes, and the light sword that was about to cut off his head was above his head. Looking up, the void suddenly distorted, and the majestic devouring force made Dustless's light sword unable to move. It was as if it was bound and unable to move. Has it been transferred? Curling his lips, Dustless looked at the majestic devouring force in the sky. The space had been distorted by the powerful force, and Dustless's hand was naturally unable to move. Shadow binding technique. A dark shadow suddenly rushed out from the bottom of his feet, quickly extended forward, and connected with Dustless. Seeing this, Shikamaru Nara's previous decadence disappeared, and the corner of his mouth gently raised. With a confident smile he said, "Now I will let you experience the Nara clans." Stupid. How can this kind of trick work on me? Looking at Shikamaru Nara with a sneer, Dustless rudely interrupted his speech. At the same time, the power in his body reversed the chakra cycle in his body. The black shadow that was restraining Dustless was directly absorbed. I've heard that your mind is very good, but your way of thinking is unexpectedly slow and naive. If everything can be solved with cleverness and cunning, would your teacher Asuma still be killed? Would you still be helpless and just stare at the enemy helplessly? I'm sorry to tell you, but that's impossible. Dustless looked at Shikamaru Nara with disdain and said with killing intent, "If everything could be solved by the brain, the world would have been peaceful long ago, and there would be no such thing as ninja, a product of war." Golden light gathered at the tip of his finger. The sharp radiance was enough to pierce through everything. Dustless's cold eyes scrutinized the few of them. A strong chakra fluctuation erupted from his body as he broke free from the whirlpool in the sky. Return to the embrace of heaven, you pretentious brat. Laser. The divine radiance tumbled and jumped out from Dustless's fingertip. The whistling golden beam cut through the thorns and shuttled through Shikamaru Nara's body. Looking at it, his body had been penetrated by Dustless, and the target was his heart. His internal organs were empty, and the internal organs in his body were burned in an instant. The golden light gathered and did not dissipate. It was like a materialized light sword that penetrated Shikamaru Nara's entire body and was inserted into his body forever. After receiving such a heavy blow, even a god would not be able to survive. Shikamaru Nara closed his eyes heavily, and his exhausted face showed a light expression. In the dark, Dustless seemed to see Shikamaru Nara smile. Dustless, seeing that Shikamaru Nara had completely fallen to the ground and lost his breath, Kakashi's eyes were about to burst, and he said in pain, "What made you become like this? You were not like this before." Looking at Kakashi faintly, looking at his painful appearance, Dustless said indifferently, "Kakashi, I dragged him from hell to heaven, and let him into the embrace of God. Why are you so sad? Go to hell." Seeing that their best friend was killed by Dustless in the blink of an eye, the other two teammates were devastated, and they stared at Dustless with scarlet eyes. The murderous aura surged out of their body like a tide, and they rushed toward Dustless. "Bastard, go back, you are not his opponent." Seeing this, Kakashi quickly shouted, trying to stop the two from courting death. In front of Dustless, even a Kage-level powerhouse could be killed in seconds if they were not careful, let alone these little brats who were only Chunin level. "Since you want to die so much, I will fulfill your wish." With a bloodthirsty sneer on the corner of his mouth, Dustless transformed into a ferocious carnivorous beast, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the two members of Team 10, and without the slightest mercy, the Kusanagi sword slashed down. Poochie! A strange blood-red light splashed in the void, narrow and deadly, and looking at the abdomen of the two, a dazzling sword mark appeared, which went deep into the bone marrow. Obviously, Dustless had completely beheaded the two, killing them in one blow. Their heartbeat and breathing stopped at the same time, and they closed their eyes in despair. Including the beautiful blonde girl, who had a beautiful figure, was killed by Dustless in seconds. This way, you shouldn't feel the pressure and pain. Have a good trip. Looking at the quiet faces of the two who died, Dustless said indifferently, as if he had just done a trivial thing. He gently raised his finger, and a black ghost fire appeared in his palm, and fell on the bodies of the three, and slowly burned them. With the passage of time, the bodies of the three were swallowed by the wind, and disappeared forever between heaven and earth. Chapter 300. Kakashi's eyes were dull and abnormally sluggish, staring at the three flames slowly burning on the ground. His whole body seemed to have been pulled out of his spine. There was no breath of life, his heart and liver were broken, and his whole body was weak. Killing people is just a matter of nodding the head. But now Dustless erased the bodies of the three people forever. It can no longer be described as cruel and cold. Such words to describe Dustless are too flattering. Damn you, Uchiha Dustless! Kakashi glared at him. His eyes were scarlet, and an unprecedented murderous aura broke out of his body. In the face of this situation, even a wise ninja like him was enraged. In an instant, Kakashi turned into a bloodthirsty beast, looking at Dustless with a murderous aura. You are so cruel, Kakashi. They are just a few harmless pawns. You and I are both people who came out of the war, and you sympathize with them. If I were you, I would think about my own situation. Turning a deaf ear to Kakashi's surging murderous aura, Wuchen smiled and said as if nothing had happened. As if nothing had happened. He was exceptionally calm and light. Seeing Dustless like this, without the slightest remorse, Kakashi's pupils became colder. You have completely lost your conscience and fallen into the evil path. Labeling Dustless as a must-kill, Kakashi said indifferently, some people can turn back and be saved even if they fall into the evil path. But some people are the opposite. Dustless, a deep-rooted person who has fallen into the evil path, has no possibility of reining in the horse at the edge of the cliff. Oh, you people always like to put yourself on the moral high ground and casually criticize others. Clicking his tongue, Dustless also looked at Kakashi with a hopeless look and said contemptuously, evil path? I feel like the god of creation, giving them a new life. Looking at Kakashi's eyes, Dustless said, since your Konoha ninja village is so good at bewitching people, then I might as well help you this time. With a smile on his face, Dustless raised his eyelids and looked at Kakashi with pity, and said faintly, the essence of this world is the law of the jungle, and the weak are destined to be preyed on by the strong above the food chain. And the ninja industry is even more the principle of the law of the jungle. It is the most common thing to take people's money to eliminate disasters for them. He's just an ant. Don't worry about it, Kakashi. Thinking of the few people who died before, Dustless has a clear conscience. However, Kakashi's words immediately caused a fierce rebound. His eyes were like knives as he stared at Dustless. When he was about to step forward and fight with Dustless, Dustless's sudden words made Kakashi's movements all stagnate. The leaking murderous aura also disappeared. I remember that when they died just now, they all had a relieved expression. The blood in his eyes swept away, and Kakashi recalled the relief on their faces before, and he couldn't help but fall into a trance, and fell into contemplation. Kakashi is not a fool. He is good at understanding other people's emotions, and then finding the enemy's flaws from it. He saw the changes in the expressions of Shikamaru and the other two. As Dustless said, Shikamaru and the other two did have hatred toward Dustless, but it was mixed with relief. Kakashi didn't understand what it meant. Don't you understand, Kakashi? Seeing Kakashi's confused look, Dustless whispered, your father, Hatake Sakumo, known as Konoha's White Fang, has you forgotten his death? It's tragic enough. Hatake Sakumo is a tragic hero. He cherishes his companions, thinks of others everywhere, and is even willing to sacrifice his life for his companions. He is respected by the world, including Dustless. However, Such a well-known hero failed the mission because of saving his companions. He was criticized, and the way he died was extremely aggrieved and helpless. He was forced to commit suicide, which is the biggest irony. Is Konoha's White Fang wrong? No, obviously not. Human beings stole chakra and obtained godlike abilities. But as the saying goes, there is cause and effect. Because of stealing the chakra that God should have, human beings themselves are trapped in the infinite cycle created by chakra, and they hate each other and kill each other. Dustless said, his voice was particularly vicissitudes of life, and sarcastically said, ninjas are originally deformed products. When the energy of chakra is extracted, it means the beginning of the curse. Your father didn't do anything wrong. It's not him who is wrong. It's the world that has been eroded and cursed by chakra. Kakashi remained silent and listened quietly. He tried his best to maintain his calmness. He knew that Wu Chun was trying to mislead the crowd with his lies at this moment. However, Dustless still saw Kakashi's mouth twitching slightly, and his eyes flashed with fleeting hatred from time to time. Obviously, he also felt injustice for his father's death. Remembering that he was still a ninja of Konoha, he gritted his teeth and persisted. It's useless to continue to hide your inner emotions, Kakashi. Seeing Kakashi suppressing the hatred in his heart, Dustless just smiled indifferently and said, in fact, you should also be aware that if one day the power of chakra no longer exists, the world will be completely stable, and there will no longer be such a thing as a shinobi world war. Dustless's calm eyes suddenly flashed with a red light, and the corners of his mouth suddenly raised into an evil smile, and his ambition was ignited. Staring at Kakashi's face, his cold and arrogant voice didn't disappear for a long time. I, Uchiha Dustless, will extract the chakra of the world, integrate it into my body, let myself inherit all evil, and cut off the cycle of karma. I will free the world from the curse of chakra. What is the crime? Not only am I not guilty, but I am the founder of the happiness of the world, the strongest savior who destroyed the old world and established a new system. Chapter 301. Dustless's eyes revealed a scarlet ambition that could devour everything. His face was full of fanaticism. If he could get all the chakra in the world and be a savior at the same time, it would be the best. Even if it was just an empty title. Wasn't the reason why people lived to become outstanding? Although Dustless has obtained countless chakra in the past, especially after defeating Obito, he obtained the 10-tailed chakra in his body, and the content reached an unprecedented level. However, as the saying goes, humans are greedy, and Dustless is naturally the same. It would be best if he could have more 10-tailed in his body. You are twisting words. After a while, Kakashi recovered from his trance and argued with a red face. Even if he agreed with Dustless's statement in his heart, he still had to stick to his position. After all, they were now in a hostile state, and it was impossible to do such a thing as throwing herself at him. This is an undeniable fact, Kakashi. I don't mind telling you. The so-called chakra is the source of human evil. Since the energy of chakra appeared in this world, the remaining people in the world have been living in the cage of chakra, and they have been confined in the cage of chakra. This was the truth. Dustless was not lying. Since Kagaya touched the sacred tree, the curse began, and it shrouded the world like a nightmare. The initiator was Kagaya's son, Otsutsuki Hagoromo, the legendary Six Paths Sannin. If he didn't unravel the true meaning of chakra and teach it to ordinary humans, the simple humans might not have fallen into the shackles of human nature. Humans are greedy. Once they have power, it is inevitable that they would let their imaginations run wild and go astray. They would not be satisfied with their current situation and have evil thoughts. Once they have evil thoughts, it is inevitable that they would reach out to others to satisfy their own material and spiritual needs. In this way, humans would be trapped in the endless entanglement of cause and effect. Naturally, evil would arise. I'm sure you've heard of the legend of the Sage of Six Paths, but I'm sorry to tell you that the Sage of Six Paths actually lived for thousands of years. He was the one who taught the essence of chakra to the world. Some people think that he's a super existence like the god of creation, but I don't think so. Ignoring Kakashi's shock, Dustless frowned and sneered. The Sage of Six Paths had hoped that chakra could communicate everything and become a bridge between each other's hearts. Thousands of years of war have silently proved that everything the Sage of Six Paths did was wrong. Dustless's cold eyes blazed as he said in a loud voice, "Now, my purpose is very simple and straightforward. That is to once again recover the world's chakra, so that the entire world can be free from the nightmare of chakra. It should not be an exaggeration to call me the new god of creation, Kakashi." Distorting the truth, I'm sorry to tell you, although what you said before is very right and very reasonable, but it is undeniable that what Dustless said before is very reasonable. Without the energy of chakra, many problems will be solved directly, and the world will be much more peaceful. But there is a saying that the capable do more work, and ninjas are the best existence to reflect this value. This world can't lack ninjas who are full of mysticism. Don't try to confuse me. His pupils dilated, and the sight of Manjikyu Sharingan focused on Dustless's abdomen. Kakashi shouted with a murderous aura, "The three of them will not die in vain." Kamui. The space in front of Dustless's chest suddenly surged rapidly, like a whirlpool in the deep sea, revealing a majestic devouring power, crazily swallowing everything around. A deep black hole appeared in front of him, constantly forcing Dustless's body to stay on the other side of the black hole forever. The idea is very good, the timing of the control is also very good, but Kakashi always forgot the most important thing. Unfortunately, your dojutsu is too weak, it's not enough to shake me. Calmly staring at Kakashi, Dustless's expression was like a rock, calm and unchanging. His tall and straight body stood so casually without moving, let alone shaking Dustless. It was extremely difficult for him to move his body. This is not the so-called gap in strength. The two sides are not at the same level at all. If the strength is slightly weaker, it can be made up by other factors. But the scene in front of him is clearly a Kage-level powerhouse fighting against an ordinary human who can't refine chakra. How disappointing. Slightly sighing, Dustless said with emotion, "I hoped that you could join my camp, but unfortunately, your brain is somewhat inflexible. It seems impossible now. I can only send you into the embrace of God like those three brats before." "You are welcome." Finished speaking, Dustless's body turned into thousands of golden rays. With a harsh roar, he directly swept in the direction of Kakashi and disappeared in an instant. As for the black hole made of gravity, it was directly ignored. Gravity can indeed restrain light, but it must be under the condition that both sides are in balance. Dustless's current strength is far beyond the dimension where Kakashi is. This little bit of gravity can't even cause the most basic trouble. So fast. Seeing this scene, Kakashi's nerves tightened, and his eyes subconsciously looked around. This strange godlike speed is completely beyond the perception of human nerves. It is impossible to imagine, let alone predict his movement trajectory. "Your reaction is really slow." A disdainful voice suddenly sounded. The one who spoke is Dustless. Seeing that Kakashi didn't react at all, Dustless's eyes flashed with contempt. His thin and weak arms stretched forward, easily choking Kakashi's neck, and lifted Kakashi in the air, expressionlessly pronouncing Kakashi's death sentence. "Game over, game over." A strange voice that has never been heard before sounded, also announcing Kakashi's end. Chapter 302. Kakashi, who lost the support of gravity, was shocked and realized that he was already a fish on the chopping board. A fat lamb in the eyes of the big bad wolf Dustless. All of this happened too fast, and when Kakashi realized it, it was already too late. Damn it! With a curse, Kakashi began to struggle, raising the strength of his body to the limit, shaking his body violently, trying to get the thin little hand away from his body. However, what made Kakashi speechless was that this thin arm seemed to have the power of thousands of pounds. No matter how he struggled, even if he turned chakra to attack the thin arm, he couldn't let it go. Dustless was so calm from beginning to end, with a bad smile on his face, looking like he was watching a good show. Kakashi was caught in the air by Dustless, swaying from time to time, And he was particularly weak. Fragile life. As long as I pinch it gently, something interesting will happen, Kakashi. Casually holding Kakashi, Dustless asked with a smile. Fearing that Kakashi didn't understand what he meant, he shrugged his arms. Kakashi's body also rose and fell with the bumps. His lungs were tumbling, making him dizzy. Before I die, I want to ask you a question. Looking gloomily at Dustless's face, Kakashi asked in a hoarse voice. More than 10 years ago, what is the relationship between the two masked men who attacked Konoha and you? After that, Kakashi stared at Dustless. He was sure that even if it had nothing to do with Dustless, Dustless would know who was behind the scenes. Is this kind of question really so attractive to you? Once, Sandaime Hokage also asked Dustless the same question, and Kakashi in front of him also asked the same question. The ninjas of Konoha seemed to have a curiosity from the soul about this kind of question. You really have a lot to say, but since you asked shamelessly, then I will reluctantly answer you. No way. I am such a kind person. Dustless fiercely disgusted Kakashi and covered himself with a layer of gold. Regardless of Kakashi's ugly face, after pondering for a while he replied, the people who attacked Konoha were me and Uchiha Obito. Impossible. Kakashi's pupils suddenly widened, revealing a look of horror he flatly denied. How could it be Obito? He had already fallen at the Battle of Kanushi Bridge, and he gave me his Sharingan. Fearing that Dustless didn't believe him, Kakashi pointed to his Manjikyu Sharingan. Haven't you found out by now, Kakashi? Maybe this is a wise man's mistake. No matter how smart a person is, there are still some details that they didn't notice. Dustless looked at Kakashi mockingly, or simply looked at his Manjikyu Sharingan and sneered. That kid is not only not dead, but now he is very nourished, and his plan is coming to an end. Now the only bijou missing are the Kyubi and the Nibi, or simply the Nibi. The Kyubi-Zen attribute chakra is in the hands of Obito. As long as the Nibi is collected, the Jubi can be resurrected. That guy is my perfect hero. In order to make him fall into darkness, I spent a lot of effort, and even plotted to kill the little girl Noera Rin, which made him angry enough to activate the Manjikyu Sharingan. The way to activate the Manjikyu Sharingan is extremely harsh, and the only way to activate it is to witness the fall of a close friend, or a close friend in front of your eyes. Therefore, the Uchiha family is called a cursed family. Including the fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato, I killed him. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curved into a cold arc. Before Kakashi could speak, the arm that was holding his throat suddenly swept out a black ghost fire. The blazing fire made Kakashi's soul frightened. Without the slightest hesitation, Kakashi broke out chakra to resist Dustless. Naive. Perceiving the chakra overflowing from Kakashi's body, Dustless sneered again and again, and in an instant, his body seemed to turn into a black hole, and instantly absorbed Kakashi's chakra and turned it into his own. The black fire jumped into Kakashi's body and spread to his whole body, and without even a scream, Kakashi directly disappeared between heaven and earth. As for Kakashi's Manjikyu Sharingan, Dustless directly burned it, and it was completely useless to him now. Looking at Kakashi's disappearance, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of hesitation and confusion. Looking back leisurely, Otsutsuki Haguro, who had accompanied him for decades, was now more than 30 years old. Although he was still young, in the future, he would die with the wind and turn into a wisp of yellow soil. Are you kidding me? How can I allow such a thing to happen? The surging killing intent broke out of his body. Dustless's face was cold, and the surrounding space suddenly dropped to 0 degrees, filled with cold killing intent, and the hoarse and sharp screams of thousands of ghosts could be faintly heard. Otsutsuki Haguro was one of the most important people to Dustless, and he absolutely would not allow such a thing to happen. You seem to be struggling. I thought you were strong, Dustless. A mocking and ridiculing voice suddenly came, and Kabuto came out of the dark forest. His appearance was quite embarrassing, and his body had many wounds and bloodstains. It seems that he used a lot of effort to deal with Haiden and Kakuzu. I just dealt with Kakashi, you actually. He was planning to ridicule Dustless, but unexpectedly, Dustless's eyes were full of cold light, and the monstrous hostility gathered in his eyes made Kabuto's soul frightened. Under that terrifying gaze, Kabuto's body uncontrollably trembled, and even breathing was abnormally difficult. Kabuto never thought that there would be such a terrifying person in the world. Just a gaze, and it made his liver and guts burst. Chapter 303. Big Snake Bag choked with sobs and hurriedly dodged Dustless's piercing gaze. That piercing gaze made him feel as if he had met his natural enemy. It was the first time he felt like someone was holding a guillotine over his head since he learned the celestial technique in the Ryuchi cave. It's not in the same dimension at all. Taking a deep breath, Kabuto's face was particularly depressed until it turned into an ugly green color. Coupled with the scales all over his body, he looked particularly terrifying. Just a simple look from her was enough to make him feel fearful and timid. This shouldn't be something a human could do. Kid, don't be smug. White Zetsu, who came out of the darkness, smiled and looked at Kabuto with a constipated face. He felt particularly happy. There was nothing more comfortable than seeing Kabuto show such an expression. Lord Dustless. White Zetsu didn't dare to be arrogant and said respectfully. Although he didn't know the reason, he had followed Dustless for many years and could tell that Dustless was angry at the moment. If he was killed by the furious Dustless, it would be terrible. Raising his head and glancing at White Zetsu casually, his cold expression gradually converged. Then, he closed his eyes indifferently and asked softly, "What's the matter? Is there any news about Nibi's Jinchuriki?" After saying that, Dustless opened his eyes and looked hopefully at White Zetsu with a smile on his face, looking forward to the latter's answer. This, Baiju's face twitched, and he swallowed the words he was about to say. He looked at Wu Chun and showed a look of fear. He lowered his head silently. It seems that there is no trace. Seeing that White Zetsu was silent, Dustless sighed, and a touch of sadness flashed in his eyes. Needless to say, White Zetsu obviously didn't find any trace of Nibi. Dustless also knew that he couldn't blame White Zetsu for this. Although White Zetsu had countless clones, this world was bigger. If he really wanted to hide a person, Yujito was similar to the killer bee-type perfect-tailed beast, and could transform into a tailed beast at will. It definitely couldn't be found in a short time. Useless fellow. Taking a glance at Dustless, the silent Kabuto mercilessly ridiculed him, then turned around and left. He originally wanted to loot Kakashi's corpse, but seeing Dustless go berserk, his interest disappeared. Moreover, there didn't seem to be any corpses on the ground. Perhaps Dustless had used some unknown power to destroy them all. Although it was a bit of a pity, Kabuto was already satisfied. Haiden and Kakuzu's corpses were in his hands. This was his greatest harvest. Even without Kakashi and the others, the corpses weren't perfect, but he was already satisfied. Those two fellows are really ferocious monsters. If I didn't enter the sage mode and rely on my powerful endurance and the amount of chakra in my body, I'm afraid the last person to be killed would be me. Lifting his hand, Kabuto looked at the bloodstains all over his body and muttered to himself. He could still feel his skin faintly hurting. Those two undying cockroaches were knocked down several times, but they still stubbornly stood up. Kabuto knew that Haiden wasn't ordinary, and couldn't be dealt with ordinary ninjutsu. He just used a strategy to temporarily bury him alive, so that he wouldn't be able to come out in the future. At the same time, he collected a large number of Haiden samples to prepare for future battles. Kabuto. While he was thinking, a cold voice came from behind him, accompanied by a strong chakra fluctuation. The boundless majestic chakra materialized with Dustless as the center, and the ground under his feet, as well as the plants and animals around him, were all broken into pieces. Looking back, he saw Dustless isolated from the rest of the world. His thin body was obviously close to him, and he could touch him with a wave of his hand, but Kabuto felt like he could only look up at him, as if he was the moon above the ninth heaven. The two of them were not on the same level at all. In Kabuto's heart, he felt an unprecedented sense of inferiority. There are some words that I don't need to say clearly. You should understand that the so-called alliance is actually just words. Once I feel that there is no need to continue the cooperation with you, I will immediately terminate it. Dustless's eyes were calm, and his voice was as calm as the autumn water, without any emotional fluctuations, and the firmness in his voice was indeed something that no one dared to question. Obviously, Dustless was real. Similarly, if one day I feel that the cooperation with you can no longer meet my needs, I will also terminate it. With a meaningful smile on his face, Kabuto stared deeply at Dustless and said without backing down, "Son of a concubine, you are really arrogant." A dense murderous aura suddenly came like a tide. Dustless sneered and said, "Don't put yourself in the same position as me. You are still too far away. If one day you stand at the same height as me, then it won't be too late to talk nonsense. Alright, you can go. Don't look for me in the future if there is nothing. I will send a Zetsu to look for you." Closing his eyes, Dustless directly ordered him to leave, his expression lazy, even showing signs of drowsiness. He didn't put Kabuto in his eyes at all, and was especially contemptuous. "You win." The corner of his eyes flashed fiercely at Dustless, and Kabuto secretly swore in his heart that in the future, he would not rest until he killed Dustless, and he would not rest until he turned Dustless into his experiment subject. Dustless's words were undoubtedly a slap to Kabuto's face, and it was a resounding slap to the face, making Kabuto dizzy, not allowing him to look for him. And whenever there was an order to pass on, the white Zetsu would automatically come to him. This was no different from a cow that could be ordered around. This hatred has no end. I will definitely repay it in the future. As if he wanted to imprint Dustless's appearance into his heart, Kabuto stared at Dustless for a while, and then resolutely turned and left. Chapter 304. Dustless gave the order to leave, and Kabuto was also too lazy to stay here any longer. The killing god in front of him was temperamental, and no one knew what he was thinking in his heart, nor did they know if he was an unreliable ally or a friend. Instead of playing with the danger of walking on a tightrope, it was better to slip away as early as possible and go home to do his experiments. "Goodbye." Trying to keep his calm, Kabuto said to Dustless calmly, and regardless of whether Dustless agreed or not, he turned and left. Only Dustless and White Zetsu were left in the dense jungle. Reckless thing. Seeing Kabuto's figure quickly dissipating, Dustless's mouth raised in a contemptuous smile. A small character would always be a small character. This kind of small character was not worth mentioning. In the future, he would either struggle at death's door, or be directly erased. Looking at Kabuto's ambitious appearance, it was self-evident what his end would be. Retracting his gaze, Dustless looked at Zetsu with a puzzled look and asked, "What's the matter?" Zetsu's main body personally came to find Dustless. Naturally, something unexpected happened. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to find him. Don't look at how Zetsu strolls around all day. In fact, he is very busy. At the very least, collecting information from all over the place requires his clone and main body to be busy for a while. Hearing this, White Zetsu's face flashed with a touch of depression, and thoughts rolled in his mind. He reorganized his tone and said solemnly, "Uchiha Sasuke, I don't know where he got the news, but he seems to have found the organization's base. Now, in the direction of the Rain Village, there are 3 other people, who seem to be his companions." After that, White Zetsu felt incredible, and his face was full of disbelief. The Akatsuki's base was in the Rain Village, and the specific people who knew about it were limited to the members of the organization. Is there a traitor? White Zetsu's eyes flashed with light, and he was surprised. Sasuke naturally knew the Akatsuki's base. Wuchen was deep in thought. After a while he shook his head. "You think too highly of Sasuke. The Akatsuki organization is full of S-class rebellious ninjas. They are all proud and arrogant people. It's impossible for them to conspire with that kid. Now that the members of the organization are almost dead, it's impossible to have a mole." Dustless knew Sasuke's temperament too well. Even if the strong members of the Akatsuki organization lowered themselves to cooperate with him, Sasuke would absolutely refuse them without mercy. And even killing them was not impossible. There was no other reason, because Sasuke's 2 brothers were members of this organization. The other members naturally loved him and received special treatment from him, so it was natural for them to be killed. It should be information from Orochimaru. Dustless's eyes flashed with light. Orochimaru was once a member of the Akatsuki organization, so he naturally knew where the Akatsuki organization was. In addition, Orochimaru was half of Sasuke's sense-like existence, and Orochimaru hated Dustless and Itachi very much. He took advantage of Sasuke's revenge to take the opportunity to eradicate Dustless and Itachi. This is indeed very likely. White Zetsu nodded. Although Orochimaru was dead, it was not impossible for him to tell Sasuke all the information about the Akatsuki organization. White Zetsu, isn't this a very interesting thing? If I didn't guess wrong, that kid's first goal should be Itachi. Brothers killing each other. This is a wonderful show that can't be missed. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into a mischievous smile as he asked with interest. The corner of Baiju's mouth twitched. He was speechless. Only Wu Chen was interested in this kind of thing. He smiled as he watched his two younger brothers fight fiercely. Only Wu Chen had such a refined interest. It's time to leave. Looking around, Dustless said indifferently. Kakashi and the members of Team 10, who were killed by him before, didn't even leave their bones behind. It can be said that it was extremely clean. Looking at the void in front of him indifferently, Wu Chen took a deep breath. With his appearance, the so-called plot had completely disappeared. Now all the unscientific things that happened were extremely scientific. In the Rain Village, it was always cloudy all year round. The weather was gloomy, and there was rarely a clear sky. Almost every day, there was a dense cloud that gathered and didn't disperse. The dark clouds were endless, and they were thick and connected with each other. A ray of sunlight couldn't find the Rain Village. The dark depths of the ground were accompanied by coldness and depression all year round. Looking up, the tall giant was clearly visible. Its uneven blue veins were particularly ferocious, and its 9 eye-catching big eyes were even more chilling. The giant was dozens of meters tall, and its body was surrounded by ancient vicissitudes of life. Naturally, it was undoubtedly the Geto Mazo. On the fingers of the Geto Mazo, there were several figures, all wearing black trench coats embroidered with red clouds. The only difference was that compared to the past, this gathering was much more deserted. I really didn't expect that the zombie duo would be killed. I used to think that Haiden was the strongest monster in the world. A frivolous and playful voice came from the big mouth of Kisame. Although the tone sounded indifferent, anyone could hear the hidden emotion. The enemy is not simple. Indeed, the enemy this time is not simple. It's Dustless and Itachi's younger brother, Uchiha Sasuke. I heard that he was taken away by Orochimaru as an experimental subject a few years ago. Now that he came out alive, it means that Orochimaru is dead. Pain's eyes flashed with a burning brilliance. He didn't expect that this teenager named Sasuke was so fierce that he could defeat Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin. Chapter 305. On the empty stone statue, several figures were clearly visible. Due to Dustless's interference, the members of the Akatsuki organization were sharply reduced. At this time, there were only Hoodlum, Masked Man, and Deidara, Hoshigaki and Itachi, as well as Dustless and Konan. Of course, the Silent Pain was also included. Bring Sasuke into the organization. The calm voice broke the stifling scene. Pain, who was sitting on the head of the Geto statue, stood up and opened his eyes. The black lines in the eye of Samsara surged with ripples. Of course, if he doesn't want to join the organization, get rid of him. Rinnegan released a cold murderous aura, Pain said in a cold tone. His eyes fell on Hoshigaki and Itachi. When he was about to instruct them to tame Sasuke, a disdainful voice with a little anger sounded first. Orochimaru should be my prey. That kid actually killed my prey without permission. Who gave him the right? A voice that was filled with coldness and hatred spread out. It spread throughout the entire cave like floodwaters. Everyone frowned when they heard this. They were stunned as they looked at the black figure that was burning with anger. There was no doubt that it was Deidara. This kid is really vengeful, but it's good. I'll use you to test Sasuke's strength. With a smile at the corner of his mouth, Dustless cast a pitiful look at Deidara. This kid is hopeless. But whether it's him, Itachi or Sasuke, Deidara was defeated by the three brothers. It's really tragic. Dustless once defeated Deidara, and Itachi was the same. As for this time, Deidara seemed to have a great chance of winning. If Dustless remembered correctly, Deidara was still nursing a grievance. His short life, under the dark clouds of Uchiha's Sharingan, is really sad. It's a pity that you, the hunter, became the prey in the end. With a relieved smile, Wu Chen looked at Deidara with pity. After a while, he immediately put on a look of indifference. He closed his eyes and looked relaxed. The corners of his mouth were gently raised, hanging a smile that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. It has to be said that in the dark Akatsuki organization, Dustless is a beautiful scenery. Then let Damura and Tobi win over Sasuke. If he is willing to join, then that's it. If he doesn't want to, then get rid of that annoying kid. Pain frowned slightly, then nodded. This kind of thing can be given to anyone. Sasuke agreed to join the Akatsuki naturally. Everyone was happy. Otherwise, he could only be killed. Regardless of everyone's reaction, Pain's body lost its texture and disappeared into the dark night sky, leaving only his calm voice in the air. At least find a place to mourn for Kaku and Haiden. Who are you kidding? Dustless smirked secretly, and his face was full of disdain. He didn't believe that Uzumaki Nagato would mourn for Haiden and Kakuzu. He didn't have the leisure nor the elegance. Only Dustless and a few other people were left in the empty cave. The atmosphere instantly turned solemn. Ghost Mermaid came out to entertain the atmosphere. His words instantly made Deidara furious. The collision of art and Sharingan. It seems that Sharingan wins every time. Shamelessly pulling out a ferocious smile, Ghost Shark half-jokingly half-seriously teased, looking at Deidara's eyes full of ridicule, indifferently adding fuel to the fire. That Sharingan kid will soon understand the greatness of instant art. After seeing my art, that kid's soul will be sublimated. Looking at Hoshigaki scornfully, Tita sneered disdainfully. In his heart, he despised the Uchiha family. The Uchiha family was nothing but a family living in the Kekkai Genkai. After getting rid of this halo, the Uchiha family was just a small family not worth mentioning, including Dustless and Itachi. Let's go, Ghost Shark. Raising his eyelids, he glanced at Deidara faintly, and the corner of his eyes passed over Dustless without leaving a trace. Itachi's body began to collapse and fade, disappearing from everyone's sight. Seeing Itachi's body fade, Ghost Shark also began to disappear. Deidara-san. Nondescript laughter rang out, accompanied by a burst of strange dancing. Seeing this scene, Wu Chen also smiled in response. In the Akatsuki organization, only hoodlum called people like this. You guys talk, communicate well, otherwise maybe there will be no more days in the future. Dustless saw this and smiled mysteriously, with a different meaning in his tone. His body faded like Itachi and Ghost Shark, and soon lost its texture. Conan beside him also did the same. Hoodlum frowned, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. He always felt that Dustless meant something, as if he was sure that they would be separated from Deidara. This is life. In the bedroom filled with lights, Dustless leisurely tasted fragrant tea, and in his arms was Yuluo, whose face was flushed. Dustless laughed from time to time. Obviously, the two of them had experienced the most primitive power activities of human beings before. I heard that your third brother has come to the Rain Village. Her ruddy face gradually converged, and Yuluo whispered softly, You three brothers are really freaks, all of you are very strong. Not to mention Dustless and Itachi, even the weakest Sasuke's strength is advancing by leaps and bounds, and it won't be difficult to surpass Itachi in the future. They are just marionettes. Even if they have great achievements in the future, it's just a passing cloud. The essence of a chess piece has never changed. Pinching the cute little dimples on Yuluo's face, Wu Chen's expression was calm and tranquil as he said in an unconcerned manner. That kid's talent is outstanding, but don't forget who is the one who guided his life. In the end, whether it is Uchiha Itachi or Uchiha Sasuke, they are all chess pieces used by Dustless. How great their future achievements are depends not on their struggle, but on how strong Dustless, the mastermind behind the scenes, wants them to become. Even Uchiha Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan was led by Dustless. Chapter 306. The way to open Mangekyo is to witness the death of relatives and friends, and Itachi's way of opening Mangekyo is no exception. Naturally, after witnessing Shirsue's death, unprecedented grief emerged in his mind. The special chakra will stimulate his eyes, and then open the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan. And the initiator is Dustless. It was he who controlled the puppet Uchiha Kagami to kill Shirsue in front of Uchiha Itachi, which made him open Mangekyo Sharingan. You're really cunning. You even schemed against your own brother. Yu Luo glared at Dustless angrily and patted away the hand in her arms. I'm afraid he's the only one in the world who schemed against his own brother. So what? Dustless curled his lips and took back his hand rather unhappily. He stretched his body and said fiercely, a man with a small amount of strength doesn't have to be ruthless. The ancient heroes all stepped on corpses. My methods are much gentler now. Dustless doesn't think he's so ruthless. In this dirty world, there are too many things like killing one's parents. There's not much market for human morality. Moreover, Dustless doesn't think it's too much to scheme against Uchiha Sasuke and Uchiha Itachi. Dustless asked himself and Sasuke, this kid, and Uchiha Fugaka couple also died in Itachi's hands. Who would have thought that Sasuke met him with a desperate look? His ferocious appearance was worse than the enemy who killed his father. Don't talk about those two boys. Don't you want to revive the Otsutsuki family? Come on, let's continue the previous after-dinner activities. Rain Village is rich in steel, and the buildings are made of steel. It's a very unique village in the ninja world. Especially this village was the battlefield of several major powers during World War II. A few years after World War II, the village also implemented a closed policy, and the situation in the village was unknown. Because of the existence of the demigod, no one dared to have ideas about the Rain Village. A few years ago, the so-called demigod had already died. Facing the 6 paths of pain controlled by Uzumaki Nagato, the demigod naturally fell in front of the gods. Little Nan. In the dark steel tunnel, Dustless and Xiao Nan walked side by side. After several years of getting along, their relationship had improved greatly. Compared to the time when they were filled with the smell of gunpowder, the current relationship between Xiao Nan and Dustless was much more tranquil and relaxed. In particular, Conan and Otsutsuki Dustless were good friends who could talk about anything. Unknowingly, Dustless and Conan became closer. Do you have any questions, Dustless? Xiao Nan tilted her head and looked at Dustless suspiciously. Her cold voice sounded more lively and light. Her sparkling eyes were very lively, sparkling and translucent like clear gems, perfect and flawless. Even Dustless couldn't help but be dazed by such a beauty. What's the matter with Nagato? Now he seems to be looking for other people. Where would he find time to find me? Turning his head very unnaturally, Dustless took a deep breath and asked calmly. Akatsuki's members were already scarce, and now Sasori of the Red Sand, Haiden, and Angle died one after another. The already stretched manpower was even more scarce. Nagato was now looking for new members. Where would he find time to find him? I don't know the specifics of this situation. I'm just responsible for passing the message. Conan replied truthfully. Why did Uzumaki Nagato suddenly look for Dustless this time? She didn't know the specifics. In countless missions, this was the first time Nagato didn't tell Conan anything. This is interesting. His eyes flashed with a strange color. Wu Chen's pace couldn't help but speed up. His face was full of expectation. He was curious about what Nagato was looking for him for. And even his confidant Conan didn't know the specific content. In the dark tunnel, 2 figures quickly shuttled through and entered a more open world ahead. Looking up, the dark environment was no different to the daytime for Dustless. He could easily see the stooped red-haired man in front of him with a black iron rod. In the whole world, there was only one person dressed like this, Uzumaki Nagato. He's really suffering in this state. Sighing silently, Dustless walked straight towards Uzumaki Nagato. He could clearly feel that Uzumaki Nagato's vitality was being eroded and occupied by the black iron rod. Forcibly using the power of Rinnegan was like this. If chakra wasn't enough, it would exhaust his vitality. The reason why Uzumaki Nagato could now linger on was entirely due to the huge vitality in his body and chakra. Otherwise, he would have died many years ago. Conan, I have something to say to Dustless, you go out first. Raising his eyes, revealing mysterious purple eyes, Uzumaki Nagato said in a hoarse voice. His old voice gave people a feeling of dying. However, if one were to pay attention, they would be able to tell that although this voice was hoarse in its twilight years, it was full of vigor and vitality. Conan was stunned at first, looking at Nagato puzzledly, but she still nodded obediently. Her eyes then stared at Dustless fiercely, indicating that he shouldn't go too far. Otherwise, she wouldn't let him go. Dustless could only smile bitterly, sighing that this little girl was really unreasonable. If he really wanted to do something bad to Uzumaki Nagato, he could have done it a long time ago. There was no need to wait until now. Conan couldn't disobey Nagato's order, so she turned and left. In the empty dark environment, for a while, only Dustless and Uzumaki Nagato were left. No one spoke, and the atmosphere was unusually depressing. I entrust Conan to you. I hope you can protect her for the rest of her life. Just as Dustless was thinking about what his purpose was, Uzumaki Nagato suddenly said something surprising. Chapter 307. Dustless didn't think about Nagato's purpose, but he didn't expect it to be such a romantic thing. Especially when two men were talking about this kind of thing, Dustless felt particularly weird, and even uncomfortable. His body unconsciously had goosebumps, and after a long time, Dustless finally calmed down. Staring at Uzumaki Nagato's dry and pale face, Dustless frowned slightly. He could hear the sincerity in Nagato's tone, absolutely without any false elements, and even a little bit of pleading. As a reward, I can give you the Rinnegan after I die. The Rinnegan rippled, and the black lines slowly spread out. Uzumaki Nagato was determined, and he looked at Dustless's eyes without any falsehood. That firm tone made Dustless stunned. Observing Uzumaki Nagato carefully, Wuchin's eyes flashed with a hint of realization. This guy used to use the Geto Mazo, and the vitality in his body was almost exhausted. Especially those black iron rods behind him were still devouring his vitality. If it wasn't for the huge vitality of the Uzumaki clan, perhaps he would have already died. Conan was Nagato's most important relative. Although Dustless wasn't the most suitable person to entrust her to, he was definitely the most reliable. With his unfathomable strength, Dustless could naturally ensure Conan's safety. This is not a problem. I will accept the Rinnegan. Solemnly nodding, Dustless said that there was no problem. Even if Nagato didn't say it, he would never let anything happen to Conan. In his previous life, Dustless was quite fond of Conan, and over the years, he had worked with her a lot, and they had established a deep affection and so-called bond. Moreover, Otsutsuki Hagoromo and Conan had a good relationship. For whatever reason, Dustless couldn't leave Conan alone. As for the Rinnegan, it doesn't matter whether you have it or not. Only the owner of those eyes, Uchiha Madara, can exert the power of the Rinnegan to the limit. In the final analysis, the Rinnegan belonged to Madara. Even if others used it, they couldn't exert its full power. Not to mention that Dustless already had the Rinnegan and the Tensigan. That's the best. Hearing this, Uzumaki Nagato breathed a sigh of relief, and a smile swept across the corner of his mouth. The stone pressing on his chest disappeared, and his breathing was extraordinarily relaxed. If he exchanged the Rinnegan for Conan's peace, Nagato felt that it was worth it. The Rinnegan had a price and Conan's life was priceless. It seems that his body is not far from collapse. Shaking his head, Dustless's eyes flashed with pity. Uzumaki Nagato was completely exhausted by the Rinnegan. The burden of the Rinnegan was as heavy as Mount Tai. Uzumaki Nagato wasn't the owner of the Rinnegan, and it was naturally more exhausting to use it. Although the chakra in his body was huge, using the Rinnegan required more majestic chakra. Some ordinary jutsu were good, and it didn't involve vitality, but large-scale attacks or seals directly required vitality. You've seen it, Dustless. It's really as you imagined. I really don't have many years to live like this. I have to arrange a good future for Conan. Nagato smiled and didn't hide it, because the Rinnegan was like this. It was a double-edged sword. His body had been hollowed out, and he could still survive without using the power of the Rinnegan. The consequences of forcibly using the power of the Rinnegan were self-evident. Dustless nodded. He didn't need to look deeper. Just looking at the surface, he could guess from Nagato's thin body that his vitality was constantly being consumed. And the vitality that was devoured would never be recovered. With the passage of time, it would only become more and more fragile, and the overdraft of vitality would become more and more serious. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and thunderclouds gathered. The dark haze covered the sky and the earth was shrouded in this gloom, revealing endless depression and ominous. The inside of the rolling dark clouds seemed to be brewing something, and it was constantly expanding, which was particularly terrifying. On the withered grass on the ground, four figures in robes walked against the wind. The whistling wind made their robes bulging, making it difficult for them to move. It was Sasuke and his snake squad, later called Eagle Squad, which was renamed after learning Itachi's true intention. Damned heavens! Suigetsu, who couldn't stand the bad weather, took the lead and screamed at the sky, venting his inner dissatisfaction and anger. It's still a while before we reach the rain village. The young man with orange hair suddenly spoke. This person was Yugo. There were several birds in his hand, and they screamed at him. The sharp sound kept ringing, and Yugo seemed to understand, sometimes frowning and sometimes nodding. Useless thing. A big man is so useless. Just reincarnate as a woman in the next life. Sasuke is still reliable. The red-haired girl with glasses looked at the indignant Suigetsu disdainfully, and then her eyes shone with a wolf-like light, and there was even some saliva at the corner of her mouth. She looked at Uchiha Sasuke with a smirk, apparently falling into endless fantasy. Her eyes even turned into the shape of a peach heart. Sasuke's partners are not bad. It seems that everyone is extraordinary. The red-haired girl seems to be from the Uzumaki clan. White Zetsu's clone was hiding in the dense jungle and was surprised, especially Yugo and Uzumaki Karen, who particularly attracted his attention. These two people's abilities were obviously good, including Suigetsu, who was shouting at God. Although he didn't see any specialty, he must be good. Sasuke wouldn't choose someone who would drag him down as a teammate. After a moment of contemplation, White Zetsu's clone went deep into the ground and disappeared. Naturally, he went to report Sasuke's information to Deidara and Hoodlum. Chapter 308. The cold wind whistled, and the boundless sky was covered with dark clouds. The clear white bird in the sky was particularly conspicuous. Two black figures peered at the ground below, sometimes showing a puzzled look. Looking closely, it was Hoodlum and Deidara. White Zetsu, that bastard. Can't the geographical coordinates be more accurate and detailed? After looking down at the ground below without any human eyes, Deidara was angry. With such a strong wind in the sky, he couldn't control the giant clay bird under his feet. No matter when, humans are restrained by natural factors, and ninjas are no exception. Hoodlum behind him was grinning. Although his expression couldn't be recognized because of the spiral mask, it was not difficult to see from his dancing movements that he was very happy. It's really strange, frowning, Deidara said to himself doubtfully. Although he complained about White Zetsu, his information would not be wrong. Even if there was a slight deviation, it wouldn't be wrong. Now there was no one in the surrounding 10 kilometers of the ground. Not to mention humans, there were no beasts such as insects. Deidara inevitably had doubts in his heart. Senpai Deidara, frowning tightly, while burying his head in thought, Hoodlum's frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Deidara, who was already in a bad mood, stared at Hoodlum unkindly. Just as he was about to scold him for talking nonsense, a loud muffled thunder resounded through the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The space that was as dark as night suddenly shone brightly. In an instant it was sublimated. The brilliance that shone like the sun shone through the void. Within the range of the brilliance, everything in the world seemed to be exterminated. They groaned unbearably. Gulp! Looking up at the countless thick silver irregular beams of light, Daidara's eyes were filled with fear, and he subconsciously took a step back. Daidara is of the earth attribute, and this divine thunder in the sky is the anger of God. It has the absolute power to destroy the world, and it just restrains him. Thunder attribute restrains earth attribute. Senpai Daidara, this situation doesn't seem right. Hoodlum calmed down this time. The single eye on the mask cautiously looked at the surrounding environment. After a long silence, Hoodlum took a deep breath. The surrounding environment was too strange. It was like a giant electromagnetic field, crackling nonstop, attracting the thunder and lightning in the sky to gather. Thick silver thunder and lightning rolled in the dark clouds. It was like a natural minefield. Something is indeed off. This kind of supernatural imagination doesn't make sense. Daidara's panic quickly disappeared and he agreed. The rain village was rainy all year round, and thunder and lightning were common, but there was never such a terrible scene. It was as if someone had deliberately created an electromagnetic field. We've been tricked. He suddenly recalled the party a few months ago, during which Dustless reported on Sasuke's abilities, including his ability to control lightning. Boom boom boom. As if to verify Dedale's thoughts, countless lightning gathered in an instant and turned into a sharp silver spear that was tens of meters long. The silver body was straight and sharp, and the tip of the spear revealed a sharpness that could penetrate everything. This was just the beginning. The silver spear hungrily absorbed the natural thunder and lightning from all sides, quickly strengthening itself and extending its body endlessly. We've been ambushed. How did that kid know the whereabouts of Daidara and Hoodlum? In the green forest, Dustless and Zetsu stood side by side, staring at the silver light in the depths of the void. Both of them were stunned. They didn't need to think about it to know that the person behind it was naturally Sasuke, who controlled thunder and lightning. That kid has become a lot smarter, and he knows how to find another way. Dustless, who returned to his senses, smiled. Although Sasuke was a bit arrogant, he was indeed a talented existence who knew how to use the power of nature to make up for his lack of strength. It seems that the kid got a lot of experience from fighting with me. Is this a case of shooting himself in the foot? Wu Chen's expression was calm as he muttered to himself with a smile. Zetsu just turned his head slightly and glanced at Dustless. He didn't hear any regret from Dustless's tone, but showed an expectant look. What means did this kid use to set up the ambush? Is it possible that he is the reincarnation of God and knew when Dedale would attack him? Staring at the void where countless thunder and lightning gathered in the distance, White Zetsu said incredulously, Sasuke obviously ambushed in advance and set a trap for Dedale, the fat sheep, to get in. When your clone detected him, I'm afraid it was already exposed. Sasuke deliberately pretended not to know anything. In fact, he was secretly aware of your existence, so he could set a trap in advance. Black Zetsu's eyes flashed with understanding. The minefield in front of him must have been prepared in advance, which means that Sasuke had discovered White Zetsu's clone in advance, so he could set a trap. Impossible. What means does he have to detect my clone? This joke is not funny at all. You have no funny genes, Black Zetsu. White Zetsu was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He immediately denied Black Zetsu's guess. At that time, his clone was hundreds of meters away from Sasuke. What means could that kid have to detect him? This was simply impossible. It's impossible for Sasuke, but his teammates are extraordinary. The red-haired girl who controls the Uzumaki clan's secret jutsu has a detection ability that is far beyond the current Sasuke. Dustless explained softly, but he agreed with Black Zetsu's statement. The current Sasuke does not have such a powerful detection ability, but the detection ability of Uzumaki Karen is very good. Kagura's mind's eye covers an area with a radius of tens of kilometers. Therefore, Sasuke's snake team can wait at ease, detect the existence of Dedale and Hoodlum in advance, and create this boundless thundercloud. Chapter 309. The dazzling lightning gathered and condensed, and the spear floating in the void was like a baby, constantly swallowing the lightning around to strengthen itself. The spear in front of me is obviously more powerful than the Kirin from last time. Speechlessly shaking his head, Wu Chen couldn't help but envy Itachi and Erjuzi. These two brothers were very talented, but his big brother was terrible. If it wasn't for the system, which was outside the law, he might have died as cannon fodder in World War III. Not good. That should be beyond the scope of S-class ninjutsu. Deidara and Hoodlum must have been killed. Black Zetsu was quite worried. The masked man Hoodlum's ability to turn into nothingness can naturally guarantee his safety, but Deidara doesn't have this ability to be immune to physical attacks. Boom! Silver light fell from the sky, like an angry god's full blow. The destructive force shuttled through Deidara and Hoodlum, who were suspended in the void, and violently pressed them to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Sand and dust filled the sky, mud splashed everywhere, and the previously intact land was devastated, and an unprecedented deep pit appeared as if it was hit by a meteorite. The ground within a radius of a few kilometers trembled violently. Everything was sealed. The central area was even more unsightly. Glaring cracks spread out like a spider web, swallowing up the surrounding ground beyond recognition. Some of the cracks were even several kilometers long. He couldn't have been killed, could he? White Zetsu's eyes widened as he looked at the ground around him, that was destroyed and swallowed. Such a large range of ninjutsu had the power to penetrate everything, not to mention being hit by it. Even if it was contaminated by it, it would be instantly eroded and turned into smoke that dissipated with the wind and completely dissipated. It shouldn't be. Looking at the giant pit in the distance, Dustless shook his head. He was an S-class ninja. Being killed by one blow, even if it was a sneak attack, it can't be justified. At the same time, Sasuke and his snake team also appeared. They're still breathing. These two guys are really thick. Uzumaki Karen looked at the charred figure in the deep pit in astonishment. Her eyes widened, filled with disbelief. Not only did he not die from such a powerful attack, his skin was only slightly charred. How could she not be surprised? They should have escaped Sasuke's attack. Jiwoo calmly analyzed, his tone carrying a hint of astonishment. Clearly, he was also very curious as to how Deidara and Hoodlum were able to dodge. On the other hand, Sasuke maintained an indifferent expression from the beginning to the end. His cold expression was aloof and arrogant. Although he was puzzled, he was silent from the beginning and didn't say a word. Karen, who was about to strike up a conversation with him, was speechless and tangled. She secretly scolded Sasuke for being stupid and not knowing how to flirt. What a powerful spell. Fortunately, God's might made me and Deidara illusory, otherwise. The masked man's eyes flashed with lingering fear. At the critical moment, he used his dojutsu to absorb Deidara into a different space. If they were hit head-on, even if they barely survived, they would lose a layer of skin. Even so, their bodies were seriously burned by the scattered lightning. However, this kind of injury was a trivial matter for ninjas, especially Deidara, who was the strongest rebellious ninja. Hoodlum, thank you. However, due to the stinging pain caused by the burn, Deidara gritted his teeth and stood up, solemnly thanking Hoodlum. If it weren't for Hoodlum, he might have died on the spot. Deidara-senpai, what are you talking about? I just did what I could. Hearing this, the masked man Hoodlum danced again and smiled embarrassedly. But you're really a hidden guy. You actually mastered such a brilliant space-time ninjutsu. After taking a deep look at Hoodlum, Deidara retracted his gaze. He was too lazy to ask more. Everyone has their own secrets. At the moment, he just looked at Sasuke and his teammates. You have guts, but you're quite fat. Deidara was so angry that he laughed. To be honest, he hated and even hated Uchiha. Because of Dustless and Itachi, he suffered a lot. Now because of Sasuke's sneak attack, he was embarrassed. He hated the Uchiha family even more. Fools who live in Kekkei Genkai will never understand the greatness of art. Turning a deaf ear to the burning pain all over his body, Deidara's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. His eyes widened, and he said fiercely, "To deal with you three brothers, I'll start with you, the youngest fledgling." Hearing this, Sasuke's expression turned cold, and his fists turned white. Dedale mocked him as the weakest fledgling. Even if this was the case, he couldn't accept it. With only 3 Tomo Sharingan, he was indeed much worse than Itachi and Dustless. White mucus overflowed from Dedale's palm like running water, and immediately turned into a giant dragon with a bang, and flew straight into the depths of the void. Ah, that kid probably really angered Dedale. Now there's a good show to watch. Looking up at Dedale, who was floating in the sky, White Zetsu gloated. Sasuke's previous attack completely enraged Dedale, a furious lion. There's no need to watch anymore. Dedale will definitely lose. Staring at Dedale, who was soaring in the sky, Dustless shook his head. If you want to destroy him, you must first make him crazy. This is the truth that has never changed. Dedale originally hated the Uchiha family very much. Now that Sasuke's sneak attack was successful, the anger in his heart naturally accumulated to the extent that it must erupt. Someone must become the target of his venting. What a pity! Looking up at the sky and sighing, Dustless turned around and left. Troubled times had arrived. Those who couldn't escape would be eliminated. Karma was reincarnated. No one could escape its curse. Dedale's death is not accidental but inevitable. The next part of the script is probably about killing each other. With a cold smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless's wanton smile lingered in the sky for a long time. Chapter 310. Just as Dustless turned and left, a figure that looked very similar to Dustless appeared behind him like a ghost. Wearing a black trench coat embroidered with red clouds, with a clear 8 mark on his face, there was no doubt that it was Uchiha Itachi. It turned out to be Itachi. You'll scare people to death if you appear like a ghost. Seeing Itachi's sudden appearance, Dustless pretended to be surprised, and then looked at Itachi with a smile. From his calm tone, it was not difficult to hear that Dustless had already noticed his existence. Obviously, he deliberately teased Itachi like this. You already knew, didn't you? Staring at Dustless faintly, Itachi's performance was plain, and his eyes remained unchanged. He didn't believe that Dustless didn't notice his existence. It doesn't matter, look at you like this. Squinting his eyes and carefully looking at Itachi, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of complexity, and whispered, Is that kid really worth it for you to pay so much? Dustless sighed. Itachi's life has already entered the end, and it won't be long before the light of extinction flashes. In this life, I don't ask about the past, I don't ask for the afterlife, I just ask for a clear conscience. Looking at Dustless's eyes, Itachi replied softly. His tone was full of unprecedented determination. He will use his last remaining strength to light the light of hope for Sasuke. Itachi's face was full of determination, his body exuded a majestic momentum, and his eyes were particularly firm. The road was his own choice, and he never regretted it. Dustless just stared at Itachi's face faintly, and for a while, he was also unusually melancholy. Sasuke's achievements can be said to be exchanged by stepping on Itachi's body. You and I are different. Just when Dustless was about to persuade Itachi to think twice, his indifferent, philosophical voice sounded first, and the content was that Dustless was also stunned. Perhaps you think that I'm very foolish. In fact, sometimes I think so too. Itachi's deep eyes were replaced by a blank look as he said in a daze, I've been living in fear like a puppet my whole life. Every day feels like a year. Sometimes, I really feel that it's better to die. Because you've been living in the script designed by Dustless. Black Zetsu and White Zetsu were laughing. They understood Itachi's feelings. Living like a puppet without emotions was worse than being dead. It was worse than being dead. But I saw hope from the little devil named Uzumaki Naruto. As he said, where the leaves fly, the fire will illuminate the village, and the leaves will sprout again. Itachi said, it was from Naruto's perseverance that he saw how a single spark could start a prairie fire. Even the weakest flame could light up the world. Therefore, Itachi decided to use his own life to ignite the bright spark, so that Sasuke's light shines all over the world. Are you really so naive now, Itachi? Be honest, communication between people doesn't exist at all. Seeing that Itachi was still so naive, Dustless sneered and said, "Perhaps you'll think that this is my personal extreme view. Of course, it's actually my own idea. But thousands of years have shown that people can't communicate without gaps." Itachi just listened quietly without saying anything. Dustless glanced at him and continued, "Indeed, as you said, the will of fire might exist, but it also left behind sins because of it. Where the leaves fly, the flames will burn, and the fire will shine again, illuminating people's hearts. But it's precisely because of this that the seeds of hatred are left, because the flames that illuminate others are stepping on the corpses of others." Dustless sneered and sneered at the so-called will of fire. Every time a hero is born, it means that someone died. Take Uzumaki Naruto, for example. After the battle with Uzumaki Nagato, he became the hero of Konoha. However, all of this was built by stepping on Uzumaki Nagato's corpse. It was precisely because of Uzumaki Nagato's tragedy that Naruto's name as a hero was born. Instead of saying that the will of fire is a beacon in the darkness, I think it's the beginning of karma. Everything is born because of karma, and it's also destroyed because of karma. The beginning of the bond means the curse of karma. You still believe in such a stupid joke? I've been wrong about you for so many years, Itachi." Dustless scolded coldly. To be honest, he didn't expect such a result. Living in a dark organization like the Akatsuki for several years, Itachi still had such a naive idea. You have a glib tongue, but your heart has been eroded by darkness. Things like human nature and morality don't exist at all. Ignoring Dustless's crazy words, Itachi also retorted. Although Dustless's words made him speechless, he didn't think that Dustless was right. Human nature and morality? What a joke. A person who killed his parents, saying that I have no human nature and morality. Don't you think your words and actions are too ridiculous, Itachi? Why do I always have a ridiculous feeling that you haven't grown up? Is it an illusion?" Dustless sneered. Although he was ruthless, he didn't kill his parents. And he secretly used Geto, reincarnation, to resurrect Uchiha Mikoto and Uchiha Fugaku. Wu Chen also boasted that he had a clear conscience after reaching such a realm. In the final analysis, in this world of ninjas, human emotions were thin and sparse. People like Itachi, who took photos of his younger brother everywhere, were indeed an abnormal existence. This world is illusory. I will do justice for the heavens, pull thousands of living beings into the world of infinite dreams, and let them live in the world of fantasy. Isn't it beautiful? Chapter 311. Itachi frowned slightly. At this moment, Dustless's face was indifferent, giving people a feeling that was particularly strange. He was indifferent, as if he was an invader from a different world. His existence was to trample on this decaying world and establish a new order. His pupils narrowed, and Itachi's eyes were bright and wise. He tried to spy on Dustless again. However, the scene that came into his eyes made him sluggish. The space began to shift strangely, pulling him into an unknown world. In the depths of the dark universe, there were countless planets of different colors. Each planet was surrounded by a strong gravitational force. If one looked at any one of them, he would be swallowed and lose his mind. Dustless was the planet with the strongest gravitational force. Itachi's reason was trapped in it in the blink of an eye, and he could not extricate himself. "Forget it, I'm nosy enough." With a self-deprecating smile, Dustless said with relief, "Maybe you are right. Everyone has their own way, and others have no right to interfere and criticize." With a sigh, Dustless found that he was nosy. He didn't expect to talk so much in a moment. Whether Itachi died or not had nothing to do with him. Anyway, he was just a chess piece. The blank look turned into clarity. Dustless looked cold and walked straight forward, passing by Itachi's side like a breeze. "I hope you don't regret it. They are alive and well, and you don't have to blame yourself." The brief and plain 6 words resounded through the void. Although the words were short, Itachi's heart stirred up huge ripples. Over the years, the same scene invaded his dream every day, torturing him. "Stop, I didn't say you could go." Turning his head, Itachi's face was slightly cold. He stared at Dustless's back and released his killing intent. he said coldly. As the price for listening to your long speech, you must answer my question. Dustless gave Itachi too many doubts. He did not expect anything else, only that Dustless could answer his questions truthfully. Ah, don't release such an oppressive killing intent. I thought you wanted to challenge me. Dustless turned his head and said with a smile. His tone was full of ridicule, and his expression was calm. He asked without a trace. Of course, no matter what, I am your brother, and I still have feelings for you. Tell me if you have any questions, just ask. Itachi's frowned brows loosened, his throat twitched, and before he spoke, his lips trembled slightly, and he asked in a hoarse voice. The people you mentioned before. Of course it's our parents. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted Itachi's question impatiently. He said bluntly, they are living in seclusion safe and sound. You don't have to bear a grudge. They are all living well and healthy. After saying that, Dustless didn't wait for Itachi to respond and left. Itachi was stunned as he stared at the departing figure. That's good. After exhaling heavily, Itachi was too lazy to ask more nonsense. The rock pressing on his chest disappeared, and his whole body and mind suddenly became very light, like a white cloud walking in the clouds. Itachi's respect for Uchiha Fugaku and his wife was beyond doubt. If it wasn't for the situation, he didn't want to kill his beloved parents. After that, the whole person has been living in the shadow of killing his father and mother. He was physically and mentally tired. Now suddenly, the rain and fog were lifted, and the whole person was cheerful. No matter what means, as long as his parents were safe and sound, the rest was not important, and living in seclusion away from the world was also the best ending. The heavy moral shackles were completely loosened, and the whole person was floating, and his spirit was 100 times better. Even the physical burden caused by the terminal illness disappeared in an instant. Vulgar. Turning his head, the corner of his eyes swept over Itachi's body. Dustless disdainfully snorted, and then simply turned and left. As for Itachi's next move, he was too lazy to ask. His feet were on his own legs, and Dustless had no right to interfere. He simply flashed away and left. Out of sight, out of mind. Dustless was too lazy to talk about the grievances between Sasuke and Itachi. No matter what the outcome of their final victory or defeat, it won't change anything. They will still be used by him. Seeing Dustless leave, Zetsu also escaped into the ground and disappeared. Itachi's eyes were focused on Sasuke and Deidara, who were in a fierce confrontation. It was worth mentioning that in the face of a powerful enemy, Sasuke was calm and at ease. While he was injured, he could also make Deidara embarrassed. Even because of Recto, Sasuke faintly stood on the upper hand. Boom! With a sweep of his foot, Sasuke easily kicked Deidara away. His own body was also in a mess, and many burn marks were obvious. On the other hand, Deidara flew out powerlessly like a cannonball. It's a bit unrealistic. Itachi's eyes were slightly bright, and he was surprised. He had expected Sasuke's strength to improve, but he didn't expect it to improve so quickly. Of course, when he thought of a certain time in the past, after Dustless and Sasuke came into contact, he quickly felt relieved. Perhaps it was because of the stimulation of Dustless's terrifying strength that Sasuke's strength improved by leaps and bounds. I'm afraid that Sasuke's growth should be beyond your imagination. With a slightly satisfied look on his face, Itachi's breathing calmed down a lot. His hard work over the years finally paid off. Sasuke's growth was beyond his expectations, and it was also beyond Dustless's expectations. But it's still not enough. He seems to have some disgusting insects hidden in his body. Orochimaru? With a cold light in his eyes, Itachi said coldly, in that case, this time I will end you completely. Orochimaru. The cold light gathered in his pupils reflected the color of confidence. Itachi never put Orochimaru in his heart, as if he was talking about an animal. His tone was slightly overbearing, which was the opposite of Itachi's usual calmness. Chapter 312. Itachi's dark pupils flashed with a cold light, and his murderous intent was awe-inspiring. His whole body was like 1,000-years-old ice, revealing a coldness that could freeze everything. Itachi naturally knew about Orochimaru. He had a deep yearning for the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. The invincible Sharingan was a fatal attraction for Orochimaru, who didn't have a Kekkei Genkai. This is the last thing I will do for Akatsuki, to get rid of Orochimaru. Itachi's deep and bright pupils were surging with anger, and he murmured to himself. As for Orochimaru, he didn't put him in his eyes. Under Manjikyu Sharingan, all insects have nowhere to hide. Cough! The blood in his lungs surged, and scarlet blood stains broke out of his mouth uncontrollably. Itachi's eyes became dimmer, and he quickly took out a few black pills and swallowed them. After a long time he calmed down. Aware of the rapid loss of vitality, he looked at Sasuke more firmly. In the Rain Village, Dustless and Itachi parted ways and came back again. In the small courtyard, staring at several people chasing and playing, Dustless's mouth swept a soft smile, sitting casually under the shade of a tree, quietly watching this harmonious scene. Little brat is really naive. This world is not suitable for people like you. Staring at several people in front of him, Dustless said to himself. Although he said this, he didn't have any displeasure. He just quietly enjoyed the scene in front of him. His expression was serene, and he blended into nature. Dustless-sama. Red Lotus was the first to notice Dustless's arrival, and said in a panic. At the same time he cursed secretly. Just now he was playing with these two little girls, and he completely forgot that he was Dustless's subordinate. Red Lotus's target was naturally Hinata and Cheyenne of the Land of Demons. Wu Chen nodded slightly. His clear eyes stared at Red Lotus's body. He sighed inwardly that this was also a peerless beauty. That faintly discernible bloody temperament added some enchantment to Red Lotus. Even with his willpower, his mouth and tongue were dry. The invisible charm that was emitted was the most fatal. Put away your lecherous eyes. A dissatisfied shout rang out. Looking up, it was the young girl, Ziyuan, who was glaring at Dustless. Her arms were baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. She looked ferocious as if she wanted to swallow Dustless alive, which made Dustless feel quite embarrassed. However, Dustless was an extremely thick-skinned person. In just the blink of an eye, his expression returned to normal. His expression was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. The speed at which he changed his expression was astonishing. Do I look like that kind of person? That was just an illusion. Seeing that Hinata, Cheyenne, and Red Lotus were all staring at him in shock, Dustless said with a straight face, pretending to be displeased, but in fact, he was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. In particular, Ziyuan's smug little face was particularly disgusting. He's really caught in his own trap. With a wry smile, Dustless casually threw 3 rings of different colors to the 3 women, and without looking at their reaction he said softly, "Today's Akatsuki is already in disarray, and it won't be long before all of them die." After saying that, Dustless's voice stopped. Looking at the 3 women, he was about to speak, but Red Lotus's voice sounded. "Dustless, Sama means that we should form a new Akatsuki." Red Lotus was also a smart person. A bright light flashed in her eyes, and she immediately guessed Dustless's intention. She looked at him in disbelief, and her pretty face was full of astonishment. The Akatsuki organization was composed of S-class defectors, including Dustless, and several super strong people. All of them had shocking strength. "Dustless, Sama, are you kidding me?" Taking a deep breath, Red Lotus touched the unique ring of the Akatsuki members in her hand, and asked in a flattered manner. Looking at Dustless's appearance, she knew that he was going to form a new Akatsuki organization. Hinata and Cheyenne looked at Dustless incredulously. In the end, those guys are outsiders, including Itachi. They are not trustworthy people. At the critical moment, they can betray us at any time. Wu Chen said seriously, indicating that he was not joking. Looking at the whole world, there was a saying that it was difficult to support a single tree. It was necessary to give these most trusted people absolute power. Among the 3 women, only Hinata's strength was the most heaven-defying. Otsutsuki Haguro had already implanted his Otsutsuki blood into Hinata's body, and it was only a matter of time before she awakened the Tensigen. After all, Dustless, a member of the Uchiha clan, can awaken the Tensigen. There is no reason why Hinata can't awaken the Tensigen, especially since her Byakugan concentration is extremely high. In the future, her dojutsu will definitely not be worse than Dustless. Red Lotus was second, followed by Cheyenne. As a Miko-sama, her strength was also quite good. However, this little girl was too playful, and Haguro spoiled her very much, so her strength was slightly inferior. But even so, in the face of a Kage-class powerhouse, the three women have at least a 70% chance of winning. The three women looked at each other with a warm feeling in their hearts. Over the years, even if Dustless has been very good to them, this was the first time he admitted that they were the most trusted people. Don't be modest, you are qualified. Squeezing out a kind smile, Dustless encouraged the slightly timid three women. Some people in the organization may not be as good as you. Perhaps you think that the progress you have made over the years is insignificant, but your achievements are untouchable to others. Dustless said. The members of the Akatsuki are just Kage-class members, and these three beautiful girls in front of him are fully qualified. The most important thing is that compared to those sanctimonious members of the organization, the three women in front of him were more trustworthy. Even Hinata was the same. The Uzumaki Naruto of the past has become a passerby in her long life, not worth mentioning. Time is the best medicine. The light of dawn shines all over the world, and the darkness cannot hide. The new Akatsuki will be an invincible existence, like a bright sun covering the world, and the darkness that tries to resist will be destroyed. Chapter 313. Dustless always believes that it is impossible to go wrong to plan ahead. Uchiha Madara can be resurrected intact. A good plan can definitely change everything. Zetsu, is the child's game over? Raising his eyelids and looking at Inyang Zetsu expressionlessly, Dustless asked indifferently. His light voice didn't sound happy or angry, as if his emotions were taken away. And there was no emotion. It's not over yet. But that guy Deidara doesn't seem to be Sasuke's opponent, and he is at a disadvantage. White Zetsu's eyes flashed with surprise, and he immediately said truthfully. He is suppressed. Black Zetsu's voice was also not calm. Obviously, he didn't expect that Deidara, who is an S-class rebellious ninja, would be so casually suppressed, especially by a teenager. Sasuke is his natural enemy, and Deidara's jutsu is eaten by him. White Zetsu explained softly after a moment of silence. This is an innate advantage, just like water and fire. He is completely in a passive mode. But a mere 3 tomo can suppress Deidara. That kid also has some skills. Dustless smiled, and was not surprised that Sasuke could suppress Deidara. After all, he killed Deidara in the original work, and used his Chidori to suppress Deidara almost all the way. Finally, Deidara was forced to self-destruct to end his life. Dustless-sama, isn't it time? Staring at Dustless's face, Black Zetsu's eyes were blazing, and he said bluntly in a hoarse voice, we should immediately encourage Pain to attack Konoha, collect the other half of Kyuubi's yang chakra, and squeeze out his last value. In fact, resurrecting Jubi only requires a small amount of Kyuubi's chakra, but there are also flaws. Jubi resurrected in such a hasty manner is not complete. Just like when he was resurrected in the original work, Jubi without Kyuubi's chakra only has 6 tomo Rinnegan. This old guy seems to be impatient. Dustless secretly looked at Heizu from the corner of his eyes. Most of the tailed beasts had gathered, and only the last 2 were left. This old man was anxious in his heart. The plan that he had been planning for thousands of years was about to succeed. How could he not be anxious when he was kept in suspense? But it is indeed time to attack Konoha. Nodding gently, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of determination. As Black Zetsu said, Uzumaki Nagato's body was gradually approaching collapse, and he must be squeezed dry. A while ago, White Zetsu also reported that Uzumaki Naruto had disappeared, and there was no trace of him in Konoha's ninja village. According to Dustless's guess, that kid should have gone to Mount Mayaboku to learn Senjutsu. But this matter can be left to Obito. I don't need to participate. Dustless said coldly. Obito was more suitable for this kind of swindling. At the same time, he had other things to deal with. Itachi wanted to use coercive means to reverse Sasuke's fate, but Dustless wouldn't let him do that. It's best to let him and Uzumaki Naruto kill each other. Let him die in the hands of the most trusted person. This way of death is suitable for my stupid brother, Uchiha Sasuke. Dustless sneered. Uchiha Sasuke wanted to kill him again and again. Dustless will never let it go. If he can let him die in the hands of Uzumaki Naruto, that will be his final end. Ah, Dustless, Sama is still so wicked. White Zetsu looked at Dustless's ferocious face, and couldn't help but laugh strangely. Black Zetsu, on the other hand, was unmoved. He has witnessed the rise and fall of the tide for thousands of years. Not to mention Dustless, he has seen more horrible things. The ninja world is such a cruel place. The winner is the king, the loser is the bandit, and the loser is the target of bullying. If Dustless didn't keep up with the times and stood out from thousands of mortals, he would definitely be very miserable now. Well, right at this moment, a wisp of surprise suddenly flashed past Wu Chen's eyes. The viciousness in his eyes instantly vanished and was replaced by a puzzled expression. His face also started to change and carried a puzzled expression. It can't be that Lord Wu Chen's benevolence has been triggered, and he's planning to let that kid off, right? Seeing Dustless's hostility disappeared in an instant, White Zetsu spoke with a mocking tone. It was because Dustless won't disappear like this that he dared to do so. If Dustless was a cold and bloodthirsty person, he would never dare to talk to Dustless in such a tone. That's not it. Dustless shook his head and turned a deaf ear to White Zetsu's ridicule. Uchiha Sasuke also needs to be squeezed dry before he can be abandoned. It seems that someone has invaded the Rain Village. The sensing barrier I set outside was touched by a stranger. Frowning, Dustless expressed the doubts in his heart. Over the years, he has arranged many barriers outside the Rain Village, and he can easily sense intruders. Now the mysterious intruder is obviously a ninja from outside the village, and his strength is quite good. He deftly avoided many barriers set before and successfully invaded the Rain Village. His courage is not small. I don't know how ignorant the intruder's strength is, or he has full confidence in his strength, and can come and go freely in the Akatsuki's base. Black Zetsu's eyes flashed with contempt and ridiculed disdainfully. There is a road to heaven, but you don't take it. There is no door to hell, but you are so stupid. After a while, the doubts on Dustless's face turned into ridicule, and his puzzled expression was also swept away. His scarlet pupils began to rotate rapidly, revealing the evil Sharingan. Jiraiya, this is the end of your life. Chapter 314. Everyone knows the name of Jiraiya, and his bitter inspirational history can be called a model for civilian ninja. Many ninjas in the ninja world use Jiraiya as their goal in life to motivate themselves. There is no other reason. Jiraiya is also immortal. He has no Kekkei Genkai. He has achieved his current achievements step by step. He is a model for civilian ninja to become a god. It turned out to be the guy who can use Senjutsu. The range of perception of Senjutsu is extremely powerful and wide. If it's him, he can indeed find Dustless Sama's barrier. After hearing from Dustless that it was Jiraiya, Black Zetsu's eyes flashed with understanding. Obviously, Black Zetsu admires Jiraiya very much. Senjutsu, a ninjutsu that uses natural energy, is not something that everyone can learn. Looking at the entire ninja world, the number of people who can use Senjutsu is less than 5. It's reasonable for Jiraiya, who has Sage Mode, to detect Dustless's barrier. It's a pity. With a sigh, Black Zetsu no longer said anything. From now on, the genius ninja, who can use Sage Mode, will disappear from the world. This kind of trivial matter should be solved by pain. But I still have some personal friendship with Jiraiya. His life will be taken care of by me. For the sake of our friendship in the past, I will leave his body intact. Wu Chen spoke with fervor and assurance. His tone was meticulous and exceptionally serious. Most of the people who died in his hands were tragic. They were either brutally dismembered or directly hit by the terrifying Yasakani no Magatama. Their end was particularly miserable. The whole body can be described as a luxurious top VIP treatment. To some extent, Jiraiya is a character who runs through the entire world. Whether it is Uchiha Obito or Uzumaki Naruto, they have an inseparable relationship with him. It can even be said that Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Naruto are the inheritors of his will. Isn't this a bit of a fuss? That kind of trash can be dealt with by pain. White Zetsu frowned and was puzzled. Dustless doesn't need to deal with Jiraiya himself. Pain can easily defeat him. Dustless only needs to be a quiet spectator. Even if Jiraiya has Senjutsu, in front of Pain who has Rinnegan, he is still a weak ant. Heiju stared at Dustless, and after a long time, a look of understanding flashed across his face. His tone also had a rare hint of ridicule as he said in a hoarse voice, "Sir Dustless is still a child at heart. I'm afraid this is just an appetizer before the main meal, just a warm-up." The drizzle was hazy while the horizon was dim. Lightning flashed through the sky in an instant from time to time, and it added a great deal of oppressive gloominess for no reason. It seemed as if it was the netherworld, and the village before him was isolated from the world, and filled with an indescribable color of despair. The burly man in a cloak strolled around, his eyes vaguely staring at the people passing by. His eyes occasionally flashed, taking in all the changes in the expressions of the people passing by. Although the Rain Village has come out of the shadow of war, it's beyond my imagination that peace has come so quickly. The current Rain Village is much more stable and peaceful than the era of war and starvation. The white-haired man was secretly surprised. He thought that the Rain Village should be in a period of civil strife. After all, at the end of World War II, the Rain Village was still in the era of war. Now it seems that he thought too much. The Rain Village not only ended the war many years ago, but it was also very peaceful. Even if most of these people's expressions were like Walking Dead, it silently proved that the Rain Village was now in a period of peace. Rumble. A rumbling sound came from his stomach. The white-haired man realized that he had not eaten anything for a few days, and his stomach was rumbling with hunger. At this moment, there was a whiff of the fragrance of steamed ham, which made him drool. Unable to bear the call of the worm in his stomach, the white-haired man quickly ran to the tofu shop and took off his raincoat, revealing a strong face and strong body. The forehead guard with the word oil floating on his forehead was clearly visible. There is no doubt that only the legendary Toad Sage Jiraiya dressed like this in the ninja world. Is this guy reincarnated from a hungry ghost? He is about to be kicked into the underworld, but he is still in the mood to eat and drink. Zetsu, who was peeping in the dark, was speechless. He stared at Jiraiya, who was wolfing down the food in the store in the distance, and couldn't help but ridicule him in his heart. Dustless has been waiting for a long time in the no-man's land not far away, and this guy is still in the mood to eat and drink. A pitiful person must have something hateful. Black Zetsu stared at Jiraiya indifferently, without any emotion. Perhaps in his eyes, Jiraiya was already a dead body, not worthy of his sympathy. A man's words are good when he is about to die. A bird's cry is sad when it is about to die. Why are you worse than a bird? You don't have to be so ruthless, Black Zetsu. Seeing Black Zetsu's indifferent look, White Zetsu began to complain again. Hearing this, Black Zetsu's eyes flashed with a touch of ridicule, but he just said casually, "You are too sentimental, White Zetsu. Jiraiya is just looking for death. For a person who is about to enter the end, it is not worth feeling sentimental, and there is no need to reveal his true feelings. You and I are just created. The extravagant emotions of human beings should not appear on us. Completing the task is our mission. You don't know how to be romantic." Curling his lips, White Zetsu no longer talked nonsense. He just looked at Jiraiya with pity. Indeed, as Black Zetsu said, Jiraiya was caught in his own trap. This was the price of entering the Rain Village without permission. Once he stepped out, he would never regret it. Zetsu's body sank deep into the ground, and his aura and traces disappeared. In the world of Rain, there was only Jiraiya who was wolfing down his food. His desolate figure had completely merged with the entire world, and he had forever stepped into the door of the underworld that couldn't see the light of day. Chapter 315. In the world of rain, all living things were so helpless and fragile. In the face of the wrath of God, they could only let it happen. They were endlessly ravaged by the raindrops. No one could resist the force of nature. They could only bear it silently. But even so, everything has its limits. When a person has the ability to change the elements of nature, it also means that from then on, it no longer belongs to the human industry. Ring, 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 ring. The crisp and pleasant sound of the bell was like the lingering sound of the mountain spring. The oriole flew out of the valley and formed a different scenery in the dark and oppressive night sky. Finally, there was a little vitality. The black figure stood in the rain, letting the wind and rain hit him, looking very powerless. However, the strange thing was that whether it was the raindrops falling from the sky or the oncoming wind, they all seemed to be forcibly distorted by some special force. They couldn't get close to him at all. The quiet face slightly loosened, revealing clear eyes. The dark ink-like eyes revealed the light of wisdom. His eyes indifferently looked at the world in the rain, and his voice resounded through the dark void. Too slow, Jew. Ka ka ka. As Dustless's voice fell, the ground beside him burst open, and huge nepenthes drilled out of the ground, revealing a different figure. It was Jew. That guy is gnawing on the head. White Zetsu gave Dustless a helpless look, then spread his hands and said, there was a generation gap between Jiraiya's strong temperament and his style of living. It's his last dinner. Hearing this, Dustless just nodded thoughtfully. But he didn't take White Zetsu's words seriously. Jiraiya looked good, but in fact he was a rough person. If he thought that he was clumsy and negligent, he would be asking for trouble. The majestic perception spread out, and the wind and grass within a radius of several kilometers were taken into the eyes. After noticing that Jiraiya didn't appear, he closed his eyes again and began to rest. Ju didn't make a sound and just stood quietly beside Wu Chen. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound of thunder resounded through the clouds. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts directly detonated the sky. The dark horizon was filled with light, and in an instant, it was as dazzling as day. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. In a trance, a figure suddenly appeared on the sparsely populated land. When Dustless opened his eyes again, he could see a tall and sturdy man in front of him. Even though he was wearing a raincoat, he could still see his sturdy body. Jiraiya, long time no see. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile after a long separation. He then glanced at Jiraiya in the raincoat. His expression lowered, and his face remained indifferent. After a short reunion, they were going to be separated forever. It was better not to see each other. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the black night sky, there were no human sounds. What responded to Dustless was the sharp sound of several missiles tearing through the air. Old friends fight when they meet. I waited for you on a rainy day, but you repay kindness with enmity. After that, staring at the dark cold light flying toward him, Dustless's eyes flashed with contempt. He pretended to be sad and sighed. The appearance of sighing was no different from the real thing. The acting was extremely realistic. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Several black kunai shuttled through Dustless's body, but it didn't have any effect. Put away your tricks, I don't buy it. Jiraiya glared at him. His eyes were bloodshot, and murderous intent gushed out like a flood. He suppressed the monstrous killing intent in his heart and asked coldly, Kakashi and the members of Team 10 are all missing. Is it your organization's people who did it? Although he had doubts, Jiraiya was convinced that it was the Akatsuki who did it. In this world, only the crazy people of the Akatsuki dared to attack Konoha so unscrupulously. Aren't you already sure in your heart? Do you still need me to explain it in detail? Why do you ask when you already know the answer? Jiraiya, as you said, their deaths were indeed caused by the Akatsuki. Casually glancing at Jiraiya, Dustless's face was full of frivolity and indifference, and continued to say, the death of Kakashi and others was not only caused by the Akatsuki, but the person who killed them is me. Whoosh! As soon as Wu Chen's voice fell, a black shadow galloped over. In the dark night sky, there was a bright light, and a perfectly straight blue brilliance pierced through in a straight line. You're so old, but your speed is still so fast. His eyelids gently lifted, and his eyes stared at the giant energy ball in the sky. He gently raised his arm, aiming at the huge Rasengan, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. Boom! The air suddenly groaned, and invisible energy ripples spurted out from Gao Yang's arm, and went straight toward the Rasengan. Boom, boom, boom! Attacked by the repulsive force, the huge blue ball burst open, and the scattered energy waves swallowed Jiraiya, the caster, and the tyrannical force of the explosion mercilessly threw him out like a kite, and a deep gully was drawn on the ground. After a while, seeing that Jiraiya was still lying on the ground, Dustless frowned and said coldly, "How can such a vulgar substitution technique deceive my eyes? Quickly show your true body, Jiraiya." Boom! Jiraiya, who was sent flying before, turned into a dark green wood. Ka ka ka. The ground under his feet suddenly burst open, and a narrow and tough tongue drilled out of it, and tightly bound Dustless's feet. At the same time, a hot wave of fire came from the front. Senjutsu Gomen, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.